Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Proved All Might Wrong in the Support Course? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Today was not his day. Though, every day seemed to not be his day. This was just how life was for Midoriya Izuku. Every day went to hell no matter what he did to change it. Not since he turned 4. Everything before then was fine. He was a happy normal child with a happy normal life. He had a wonderful mother and a best friend, and there was only one thing that could make it more perfect. The quirk. But he never got one. A month after he turned 4, all the other kids in his class had displayed some sign of a quirk, but he hadn't. The mother and son duo waited another month, but nothing changed, so Midoriya Inko brought her son to the quick specialist to diagnose the problem. Izuku went through countless tests and screenings without knowing what was really going on. He just followed what anyone asked of him. He ended up in a room with his mother after a few hours, looking at a doctor who had an X-ray on the wall. "It's not going to happen." 5 simple words and Izuku's world was crushed. He would not get a quirk. He was quirkless. How could he be a hero without one? Every hero he knew had a quirk. So how? Izuku didn't know how he got home, but he found himself in front of the computer. By instinct, he found the bookmark for the familiar video of All Might's debut. All smiles and strength, with every intention to save every last person there. The kind of hero Izuku wanted to be. "Fear not, citizens, for I am here." The door creaked a little as his mother entered the room. A small, cracked voice broke the quiet. "See, Mom, he always saves someone with a smile," Izuku said, a wobbly smile of his own on his face. He already predicted how his mother would answer, but he hoped he was wrong as he asked, "Do you think I could still be a hero too?" Inko stared at her son for a short while, tears building in her eyes, as she thought about his question. She shot forward and grabbed her son in a sympathetic hug while telling him she was sorry. It was enough of a no for him. If only she could believe as he did. "Didn't you hear?" "What?" "Izuku is quirkless." "Quirkless?" "Wow, Katsuki is right. He is a Deku." Izuku heard every comment his classmates said, but he was still too in shock to respond. All his dreams, all his aspirations, seemingly out the window because of some genetic anomaly that he couldn't control. It wasn't fair. But then again, when had life ever been fair? Guess he just had to try harder. Throughout the years, Izuku did his best to stay positive. After all, that's what All Might did. Always faced any challenge with a smile. He faced the ridicule of his peers and teachers as best he could. He always tried his best when studying and would analyze any hero fight he saw. His mother wasn't thrilled about his aspirations to be a hero, thinking his dream was practically impossible, but she never stopped him from trying. There wasn't anything that could stop him when it came to his love of heroes. She even let him started taking self-defense lessons. Her thoughts being that even when he didn't become a hero, it was always good to know how to defend yourself. Plus, his dad's endorsement of it didn't hurt her decision either. The biggest obstacle for him was Kaken. Kaken, as always and forever, will be a force to be reckoned with. His personality was his explosion quirk personified. Big, bright, flashy, and strong. Perfect for becoming a pro hero. Everything Izuku wanted to be. But everyone thinks he couldn't. And Kaken made it very clear he didn't think so either. He mostly stopped any physical attacks once Izuku started his self-defense classes and began to fight back. But verbal attacks were still on the table. Every day. Especially this day. So yeah, today was not his day. If you want a quirk so bad, why don't you take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life? Izuku just stared at him in disbelief at what he just heard his childhood friend turned bully say to him. Suicide baiting? Really? He knew Kaken could be a great hero, but this? This was not how a hero should act. What if I actually did it, Kaken? It would ruin your chances, stupid JRK. As he waited for Kaken to leave, Izuku slowly packed the rest of his backpack up. Once he was sure the explosive blonde was gone, he shouldered his bag and headed outside to look for his notebook. which Kakin had graciously exploded and then tossed out the window on top of the suicide baiting. He found it in the koi pond outside of his classroom. Saving it from the fish, he gently placed it in his bag to dry out later. After all, it held his precious hero notes inside. With a frustrated sigh, Izuku fixed his bag and walked away from the school. Izuku needed to work on his situational awareness. Because one moment he was walking home through an underpass and the next he was being drowned by a villain made entirely of sludge. "You're a hero to me, kid. I didn't know he was in the city." The villain was mumbling about something that Izuku couldn't understand. He was more focused on trying to breathe again. The sludge villain was trying to force himself down his throat, and it hurt. Black spots started to encroach on his vision when he heard a somewhat familiar voice shout out, "Fear not, citizen, for I am here." The world went black. Izuku woke to a persistent tapping of his face. Groggily he woke up, taking in his surroundings. There was a tunnel and a sludge monster. He was taken, and then Izuku's brain snapped back into reality in a form of whiplash, and he looked up to see the number 1 hero standing in front of him. All Might. All Might was in front of him. And he was saying something? Oh right, he should be listening to that. "I'm sorry, what?" Izuku said. "I said I thought I lost you there," All Might repeated, his iconic smile plastered on his face as always. "Apologies for getting you involved with that villain. I only got back in town recently and the sewer system is very confusing. But not to worry for." As the hero talked about how he captured the sludge villain, Izuku was mentally freaking out. All Might, the number 1 hero, the symbol of peace himself, was stand in front of him, talking to him, and had even saved him. Oh my god, am I dreaming? He pinched himself. Nope, not dreaming. Oh man, I need to get his autograph. He looked around for his notebook only to see it was open on the ground with All Might's signature already in it in big bold lettering. "Now then, young man, I must be off," All Might said, securing the bottles he had trapped the villain in his pants pockets. "I need to bring this guy to the police station." You're leaving already?" Izuku asked, his nervous stutter coming through. "He can't leave yet. I have to ask him." "Yes, a hero's work is never done," All Might said, preparing to jump. "Now stand back, I'm taking off." Izuku didn't know what possessed him to do so, but he jumped forward and latched onto All Might's leg as he took off like a rocket. "Hey kid, what are you doing?" All Might said, trying to shake Izuku off. "I like my fans, but this is a bit much. I see, can't let go." Izuku yelled over the wind as they flew. "If I let go, I'll die." Good point. Hang on tight and close your eyes and mouth." The number 1 hero glanced down to check on the boy and noticed the bottles were starting to slip out of his pockets. He firmly shoved the bottles back in and then held the boy more securely to his leg. He coughed and a drop of blood leaked out of his mouth. They landed on a building a short while later and Izuku felt like he was going to throw up. That was the scariest and stupidest thing I have ever done. He took some deep breaths to settle himself after flying across the city while hanging on the number 1 hero's leg. "Yeah, not my greatest moment. That was not a smart move, young man," All Might said, scolding him for his foolishness. He coughed a few times and Izuku was worried that he might have a cold or something. "I really must be going now. Hopefully someone in the building can let you down." "Wait," Izuku pleaded. He had to ask him. He just had to. "No, I can't wait." "Well, here goes nothing. Even if I don't have a quirk, do you think I can be a hero like you?" Izuku yelled, mustering all of his courage to ask the one question that consumed his whole being. He continued to talk about his goals and dreams to help people, not noticing his idol changing before him. When he finally looked up, the muscular form of the number 1 hero was replaced by what could only be described as a walking skeleton. "Wasp, who are you? Where's All Might?" Izuku exclaimed, frantically looking around for some clues to what happened. There's no way this could be the same man. The man stared at him with piercing blue eyes, some blood dripping down his chin. "I can assure you, I am All Might." And no way. Izuku felt like his mind was a frozen computer program. "How? You know how some people SCK in their gut while at the pool? It's like that." The explanation was lacking to say the least. All Might talked about how his smile was a brave face he put on to encourage people, but that there was fear behind it nonetheless. Izuku felt like he would puke again when the man lifted his shirt to reveal a gruesome scar that marred a large portion of the hero's torso. It was a wound he had gotten about 5 years ago from some big-time villain. "I'm down to only being able to do hero work for 3 hours a day," All Might said, lowering his shirt. "F 5 years ago? Was it Toxic Chainsaw?" Izuku asked. All Might let out a slight chuckle. "You're well informed. But no, that lowlife could never do something like this. No, this was a fight that I asked not to be made public. As the symbol of peace, the public mustn't see me in this state or they could lose hope." A villain that proved a match to All Might? What kind of power could such a person have to challenge the overwhelming power of his idol? It seemed impossible, but the evidence was right in front of him. Out there, in the world of heroes and villains, was someone who had the power to almost destroy the symbol of peace himself. Izuku had never felt so small. "The life of a pro hero is one of risk and danger," All Might said, staring intently at the quirkless boy in front of him. He didn't want to crush the kid's dream, but this was something he needed to hear before he got hurt. "Without a quirk, can one become a hero like me? It pains me to say this, but I must say no, I don't think it's possible." Ah. That was all Izuku could say. "So, I guess it's true if even All Might himself doesn't think I can do it? But he doesn't even know me or what I can do. Could he be wrong?" As he was lost in thought, All Might stood up to leave and walked toward the stairs, checking his pockets once more. The bottles containing the villain from earlier were still there. He mentioned something about joining the police to still help people and that it was okay to work towards a dream but to keep it realistic. With that, the man left and Izuku merely sat down and looked out at the cityscape. At the end of the day, Izuku found himself still on the roof that All Might left him on. He never found the energy to leave as he continued to stew over the interaction. All Might told him no. He did give some understandable reasons why, but even the sight of his mangled torso couldn't extinguish the fire of Izuku's desire to be a hero. Although, it did burn a little less bright. After all Might himself, his favorite hero, his idol, didn't think he could do it. Izuku thought back to what his childhood friend had said to him early. "If you want a quirk so bad, why don't you take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life?" As if he could ever do that. He would never do that to his mother. Besides, he was too stubborn to give up like that. Even if no one believed he could, it had never stopped him from working towards his dream before. And it wasn't going to stop him now. As he was sitting by the edge of the roof, watching the sun setting in the distance, he heard the faintest noise behind him. Slowly and cautiously, Izuku glanced behind him. He expected a hero of some kind to be there. No one super famous, but maybe an underground hero. Like Eraserhead. But that was not who he saw behind him. The hero killer, Stain. Izuku's eyes widened and a quiet gasp escaped his lips. "Stain?" The man chuckled. "So, you have heard of me, child?" There, right in front of him, was the villain who had credit to multiple murders and assaults of pro-heroes, claiming them to be fakes and that he was cleansing the world to reclaim the term hero. His red eyes stared at the boy through a ratty mask and a long red scarf was wrapped around his neck that was just as tattered. His outfit was made for combat with armor protecting his torso and legs. And knives. Just so many knives. Izuku could only look on in fear and bewilderment at the man. What was he doing here? Why was he on this roof? Izuku was not a hero, yet, so Stain shouldn't have any beef with him. What are you doing here?" Izuku stuttered out, voice quiet. He watched the man like a hawk, unsure of what he planned to do. He knew he wouldn't stand a chance against the hero killer, but he refused to be taken by surprise. Stain stares at him before answering. "I was out looking for false heroes and saw a lone figure on a roof. Decided to check it out only to find a child. So, I'll ask you the same question. What is a child like you doing here?" Izuku continued to stare at the man, and when he made no move towards the boy, he hesitantly replied, I was thinking about how I want to be a H-hero, but no one believes I can be." One of Stain's eyebrow quirks up as he asked, "Why?" Izuku took a stuttered breath in. Well, I either live or die regardless. Because I'm quirkless. Stain's eyes widened for a brief second, more in shock of meeting someone who is quirkless. It was extremely rare nowadays. He never had given a thought to the quirkless in his mission. But he had never thought they couldn't be heroes. To him, a hero was someone who was self-sacrificing, wanting to help others with no interest in monetary gain, putting the safety of others before their own without interest in if it would make them popular or not. Never letting something as pathetic as personal gain or self-interest sway them. Never abusing their power for favors or seeking revenge. There were so many fakes out there that did so, and Stain planned to cull them until only the true heroes remained. Society's view of heroes today was fundamentally corrupt, filling the minds of future heroes with false ideas of what a true hero is. More and more fakes were being produced, thinking that a strong quirk is all one needs to be a hero. Power does help in a fight, but if the person wielding it doesn't have a hero's heart, everything they do is a lie. To placate the public, all the while being paid for putting on a show. Actors on a stage. That is what the term hero has been reduced to today. Fakes performing while the people watch and cheer. Stain knew nothing about this boy except he had no quirk and wanted to be a hero. Being quirkless, the boy would never have the temptation to abuse a power over others since he didn't have one to begin with. That didn't mean he couldn't fight. Quirks were just tools, and many needed other tools or support items to be used properly. For the hero killer, his knives were important for his work, making it easier to get the blood he needed to subdue fakes. After all, if he couldn't consume someone's blood, he himself essentially fought quirkless. To him, even someone without a quirk could be a hero, as long as they had the heart. If I may ask, why do they think someone without a quirk can't be a hero? The hero killer asked, deliberately putting his knives back in their sheaths slowly, and then lowered himself to sit on the roof. Izuku watched the man's actions and spoke only once he was seated. The gesture helped the boy calm down a bit. Like the man was putting himself at the same level as him. Treating him like an equal. Was kind of nice. Because everyone's my mom, my childhood friend, classmates, teachers, they all think that the quirk makes the hero. That I am weak without one and would just be a liability to other heroes in the field. Even All Might said I couldn't. All Might? The man questioned. Stain didn't know what to think about that. All Might. The ultimate hero in his eyes. He said someone without a quirk couldn't be a hero? He didn't want it to be true. But why would the boy lie? Yeah. I met him today. He saved me from a villain. I was just happy to meet my favorite hero and couldn't give up the chance to ask him, Izuku replied, getting lost in his fanboying for a second. But the excitement of meeting the symbol of peace now had a bittersweet aftertaste. His answer was no. He didn't think someone without a quirk could be a hero like him. The man furrowed his brow, still not wanting to believe that All Might would say such a thing. Before Stain could say anything, Izuku continued speaking, his hands gesturing wildly in the number one hero's defense. Don't get me wrong, the boy said, turning to fully face the man. If the hero killer was willing to give him his full attention, Izuku could return the favor. I understand why All Might said what he did. It hurt, but he does have a point. To a degree. How could I be a hero when I would only be a liability in the field? Without a quirk, wouldn't I only ever be a useless quirkless Deku? Deku? Is that your name? Kind of a cruel to give a child a name that means useless, the hero killer commented. No, it isn't, the boy said, turning his head to the side to look over the city. That's just what Kaken calls me to make fun of me. We've known each other since we were born. We used to do everything together. But he changed when he got his quirk, and I never got mine. Stain sat there lost in thought. He couldn't really believe that All Might had said that. But he guessed that every true hero could have some flaw. And he didn't know who this Kaken was. But the connotation of the name Deku left a sour taste in his mouth. He didn't know what he wanted to do about all this. But before he could even start to think about what he wanted to do, he needed some answers. Child. Izuku hesitantly looked up at him. Why do you want to be a hero? Child. Why do you want to be a hero? Izuku stared at Stain for a second in slight shock and confusion. Then he turned back to look at the city, deep in thought. Why did he want to be a hero? For as long as he could remember, his immediate response would be to save people with a smile, like All Might. But now that the number one hero himself didn't believe in him, Izuku felt like that goal wasn't enough anymore. One goal he did have, has always had, was that he wanted to help people. Save people. No matter what. From helping a family of ducks cross the street to helping little old ladies carry their bags to attempting to keep other kids safe from Kaken's rather explosive personality. He only wanted to be useful and help however he could. He stopped and took a deep breath. I want T to be a hero to help people. No matter who it is, I've only ever wanted to help. To be useful. I may never be as powerful or popular as All Might, but I never cared about rankings. At best, I would be useful as an underground hero. They always help people without the praise and publicity other heroes get. But that's all I've ever wanted to do. To help. Interesting, Stain thought to himself. You say you don't care about rankings, and yet you say All Might is your favorite? The number one hero. Not that I'm any different. Izuku let out a bittersweet sigh. He couldn't help it after meeting his idol only to be told he couldn't be a hero by said idol. Yeah, he is my favorite and still is despite his answer. It's because of his spirit. All Might tries to save everyone he can to the best of his abilities. To encourage people that everything will be okay with his smile. I've always admired him for that and wanted to give people that same hope. As the boy talked, the man found himself more intrigued by this young hero to be. He let the boy ramble on about how All Might helped others. How the number one hero used his rank and influence to support various social causes and movements. How he used his money to donate to charities and organizations. How the boy himself wished to do the same when he became a hero no matter where he ended up in the rankings. It was refreshing. For someone to actually embracing what Stain himself thought what a hero should be. Little hero, Stain interrupted. Izuku squeaked out an apology for rambling and looked at the man in front of him. All your life you have been denied what your heart truly yearns for. To help others and become a hero. Had even All Might himself tell you no. But Izuku watched the hero killer slowly stood up, the diminishing rays of light illuminating him as the sun set. I can see that you have the true heart of a hero, and despite what everyone says or believes. Izuku found himself frozen in his spot as the hero killer towered over him. It won't be easy and you will need to find something to give you an edge in a fight, but I believe. Green eyes widened as the man outstretched his arm and pointed to the boy. You can become a hero. After his declaration, the hero killer left the rooftop quickly and Izuku with it. The boy was in a daze, trying to process everything that had just happened. He made his way home as his mind worked on sorting through it all. The hero killer, Stain, believed he could be a hero. Not his mom, not Kaken, not All Might Stain. The man who believed that all fake heroes must die and only those who are worthy of the title could live. This murderer believed in Izuku when no one else did. The closest he had gotten to encouragement to pursue his dream was from his dad saying he could at least try. In a strange sense, he was kind of proud that the man believed in him what with all of his convictions and beliefs on what a true hero is. But on the other hand, he was also a very misguided man who killed people. The Greenwich shuddered at the thought that he had been in the presence of a villain who killed heroes. Sure, the boy agreed with some points the man made, but murder is never the answer. When he killed his victims, the man stole the opportunity for them to learn from their mistakes and improve themselves. Sure, there were some people who never learn, but a hero should always give them that chance to be better. Evolve. In any case, the villain believed that he, a quirkless teenager who only had a dream and determination to aid him, could become a hero. Despite all the man's flaws, Izuku knew that his opinion mattered and found he wanted to prove to the hero killer that he was indeed worthy. It would not be easy, not by a long shot. But it was a challenge that Izuku would gladly face. Eventually he got home and walked inside only to be smashed into by a green blur. It took Izuku a second to realize it was his mom, hugging him as if her life depended on it. Izuku! Inko exclaimed, squeezing her son firmly with her arms. Where were you? It was getting so late and you weren't home yet. There was talk on the news of All Might taking down a villain near here, and you know how you go chasing those hero fights even though you know how much it makes me worry. And Mom, calm down, Izuku squeaked, giving her a short hug before trying to get out of the bear hug she had him in. I'm home now. I'm safe. Could you maybe let me breath now? Inko quickly stopped her ramblings and released him from the hug but kept her hands on his shoulders. She chuckled at his exaggerated play acting of getting his breath back. She knew that he did that just to make her laugh. Better, she giggled. Inko opened her mouth to talk again but then started to cough a little. Izuku, what happened to you? You smell like a sewer. She could see bits of sludge and debris sticking to his uniform. Oh, about that, Izuku said, scratching the back of his head nervously. You know that villain that All Might took down? Izuku, please tell me you did not run to the fight to try and save the victim again, Inko demanded in full voice. No, I didn't, Izuku stuttered out. He focused on the ground, unable to look into his mother's eyes as he said the next part. I was the victim actually. The greenette mother stared at her son in shock. My baby was attacked by a villain? Her mouth suddenly felt dry and her throat seemed to constrict. Tears fell down her cheeks and she could only rasp out one word. What? Izuku saw his mom's distress and pulled her into another hug. I was walking home and this villain made of sludge attacked me, he explained. His mom let out a choked sob as she hugged him back, holding him tight to let herself know that her son was safe as he continued. I am okay now. He didn't hold me for long. All Might came and took him out with just one punch. I know it was bad that I got attacked by a villain B, but I got to meet All Might, Mom. Inko let out a wet chuckle as her tears continued to flow. Of course, her son would downplay the danger he had been in just because he got to meet his favorite hero. It was so Izuku. Did you get an autograph? She asked, pulling back to see the huge grin on his face. Yeah. I didn't even have to ask for it. He signed my notebook. The hero fanboy rambled with a big smile. But then it dimmed a bit and Inko looked at him with concern. I asked him if I could be a hero. He said no. The bright smile from before was completely gone. Oh sweetie, Inko said, hugging her son again. She knew how much All Might meant to him. He was the young boy's idol, his inspiration. And to have the #1 hero tell him no must have been a blow to his confidence. When Izuku was younger, he tended to be a timid and shy kid but one who would still stand up for others. As he grew older though, his confidence grew as he took self-defense to help in the pursuit of his dream. The mother still wasn't too keen on the idea of her son becoming a hero and didn't think he had much of a chance in succeeding, but she supported him in following his passions and doing his best as long as it made him happy. She only hoped that when he had to face the reality of his situation that it wouldn't hit him too hard. If it did, she would be there to help him pick up the pieces. How does Katsudon sound tonight, honey? The mother asked, knowing that having his favorite food would cheer him up. Her son only gave a nod which she felt on her shoulder. She gave him one last squeeze before letting him go. All right, why don't you go take a shower and I'll make dinner? Leave your uniform outside the door so I can wash it tonight. Izuku gave another nod and headed towards his room to get ready to take a shower. After he was clean, the mother and son ate a quiet dinner while his uniform was in the wash. Instead of watching the news as he usually did after dinner, the boy went straight to bed. He was so tired and just wanted to go to sleep. It had been an exhausting day, both physically and emotionally. He was suicide-baited, attacked by a villain, found out a huge secret about the #1 hero, and then was told he couldn't be a hero by said #1 hero. And yet, with so many ups and downs, the highlight of his day, other than meeting All Might because come on it's All Might, was that finally there was one person who believed in him. Stain may not be the ideal person to use as motivation, but knowing the hero killer's convictions, Izuku couldn't help but be determined to prove himself to the man. Tomorrow he would continue pursuing his dream, perhaps finding new ways to help him reach it. Something to give him an edge, as the hero killer said. But for now, he would sleep. The weekend came quickly and Izuku continued his usual routine. He didn't have any ideas as of yet on what else he could do to help him pursue his dream. For now, he decided to follow what he normally did to see if anything inspired him. As a start, Izuku went on his usual morning run. Every morning since he started taking self-defense classes, he would go for a run to help improve his stamina. Running was actually very relaxing to the greenet. No one bothering or bullying him. It was just him with the sound of his breathing and his feet hitting the ground. For a change of pace, Izuku decided to go a different route. Seeing as he was trying to change himself, then why not his running route too? Usually he ran around the neighborhood, but today he decided to run by the nearby beach. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park used to be a beautiful place. Izuku had clear memories of playing in the water as the pristine landscape sparkled in the sunlight. But over the years, the currents would carry various trash and debris to the sandy shore, and people started using it as a place to illegally dump their trash, rather than disposing of it properly. As the piles of garbage grew, less and less people came to the beach, allowing the place to fall into further disrepair. Izuku frowned as he jogged by the beach, hating how such a once beautiful place was reduced to an unofficial dump. People should be cleaning up this mess, not adding to it. The greenet stopped in his tracks as he was struck by an epiphany. If no one else was cleaning the beach, maybe he could? It would be good training to lift so many different things, and it would be good for the community. Izuku thought back to what All Might had said about cleaning the environment during an interview. If every person in the world would take the time to pick up a single piece of trash every day, the world would be a more beautiful place. Even one person with a hand willing to help others can inspire hundreds to follow. After all, the main objective of a hero is to serve. Even the simple act of picking up trash is a heroic one. Izuku was a single person, and he had two hands willing to help others. Sitting in front of him was a literal pile of problems for the community. Izuku wasn't a hero yet, and he couldn't save people from villains, but starting with cleaning up this trash pile felt like a great start to a hero career to the greenet. There wasn't much the future hero could do that day. He cleaned up a small pile of cans and plastic bags, planning to dispose of them at a convenience store on his way home. There was no way he was touching any of the other trash without some sort of protection like gloves. Also, he would need to talk to his mom about getting a truck or something to haul them to the actual dump. Izuku still wasn't sure what he was going to do to give himself more of an edge in a fight, but this would be a good project to focus on in the meantime. Who knows? Maybe he would find inspiration while cleaning up the trash. After talking with his mom about cleaning the beach, Inko helped him with getting a truck and a permit to park it near the beach. It allowed them to take the truck to the dump at the end of the day and then leave it at the beach for Izuku to start filling it up the next day without having his mother drive the truck from their home and back. Within 1 week, Izuku fell into a new routine. After school ended, he would go home and do his homework before changing into grubby clothes and heading to the beach. He brought plenty of water as well as safety gloves, trash bags, healthy snacks, and a small first aid kit just in case. Once there, he would attack one section at a time. On his first day, he had mapped out a makeshift grid in his notebook and focused on one section at a time so he wouldn't get overwhelmed. He knew it was a huge project he was undertaking, but it was one he planned to take on with enthusiasm. Cleaning the trash was challenging to say the least. Boxes, tires, bikes, glass, microwaves, TVs, etc. Thousands of pieces of garbage with different shapes, sizes, and weights was a real workout for his muscles. It wasn't too bad though, since he had built muscle over the years in his self-defense classes. But this would be the first time he did anything like weight training, so his muscles still yelled at him at the end of the day. The satisfying soreness helped him fall asleep at night. It was tough work, but every day when his mom and him drove the full truck to the dump to empty their load, Izuku knew that was one less pile of trash on the beach. One step closer to cleaning up the beach and making it into a beautiful place again. To a place that will bring a smile to people's faces. Even if no one knew who cleaned the beach, seeing their smiles would be reward enough for the future hero. "So, you're the one cleaning up the beach," came a voice out of nowhere. Izuku couldn't help but flinch, dropping the bag in his hand. He was so focused on cleaning that he didn't notice someone approaching him. Well, so much for anonymity. He looked up to see a girl with shoulder-length pink hair that was styled into dreadlocks and goggles placed on her head. She was wearing a black tank top, black work boots, and dark blue coveralls but with the top open and tied around her waist. Her eyes were yellow and had markings that looked like the crosshairs of a scope. Did that have to do with her quirk? Kudos on helping the earth and stuff, the girl continued. But you're taking away things that could help my babies. Babies? Izuku squawked. She's a mother already. She looks too young for that. Also, how would literal trash help a baby? It's what I call my inventions, she said, grinning. You see, I make support items and I am going to become the world's #1 support engineer. The name's Hatsum Mei. She offered her hand in greeting. Izuku stared at the hand blankly for a second before shaking out of his stupor and taking it, giving it a hesitant shake. I am Midoriya Izuku. It's nice to meet you. Glad to meet you too, Hatsum said. Now, why did you suddenly want to clean the beach? It's been like this for years and I've found so much material I can use to make my babies. Oh well, Izuku managed to stutter out. It had been a long time since he had really talked to someone his age. Especially a female someone. The girls at school avoided him like the plague, so the only females he interacted with was his mom and Auntie Mitsuki. I just thought it would be good to clean up the beach. If you want, maybe tell me what you need, and I can separate them for you. That's very thoughtful of you. Here are the kinds of things I need. She then started to list off very confusing instructions on what she wanted him to keep. He tried to keep up, but all of it sounded like nonsense to him. She rambled on until she noticed his face of confusion. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? Not a clue, he answered with a chuckle, sheepishly scratched the back of his head. I never looked into how mechanical things work, so I don't know what components you're talking about. Sorry. No need to apologize, Hatsum declared. With a grin on her face, she pulled out her phone and shoved it in the boy's face. Input your number. I'll text you a list of the appliances I need. Not everyone can be a support genius like me. Wow, humble much? Izuku took the phone and typed in his number. He was a bit hesitant to be giving his number to a person he just met, but it would be convenient to have a list. Plus, he could message her to ask about an item not on the list. He was happy to help the inventor to get materials for her babies, as she calls them. Handing her phone back, he asked, So, you're into support? What got you into that? Hatsum had already turned away from him to inspect the trash, looking for any goodies. Oh, my mother is also a support engineer and taught me everything I know. Figuring out how something works and taking it apart to then put it back together into something entirely different is super fascinating. I want to make support items for heroes like my mother. I'm going to go to UA and show my babies to the world. Izuku was impressed. The girl had such enthusiasm for inventing support items. In the hero world, those in support were essential in helping the heroes use their quirks to the best of their ability. Certain quirks could have some nasty side effects. To counteract that, support items were used, adding to the tools a hero could use on the job. Wait, support items are tools. Like quirks are tools. Used to help heroes in their fight to help people. Izuku didn't have a quirk, but that doesn't mean he couldn't use support items. Could this be it? Excited at this revelation, Izuku turned to the inventor with a look of pure determination. Hatsum-san, please teach me to build support items. The girl stopped looking through the trash to face the boy. She raised an eyebrow and asked, Why? I want to be a hero, Izuku stated. He was nervous to open up to a practical stranger, but he needed to do this. It has always been my dream to help people, but the majority of people believe that I can't be a hero because, okay. Deep breath, Izuku. You can do this. Because I'm quirkless. He paused for a moment to gauge her reaction. When she said nothing and her expression stayed neutral, he continued a bit more confidently. Since I don't have a quirk, people think that I am too weak. That it's an impossible dream. But there is one person who believes I can. And I want to prove them right. I have training in several kinds of self-defense and I've practiced with different weapons like staffs and eskrima sticks. But again, I'm quirkless. I need something else to give me that extra edge that all those with quirks get. The answer is support items. With those, plus my analysis skills, I feel I will be able to become a hero. The greenet waited for the girl's response. She still hadn't said anything, seeming to be scanning him with her eyes. Crap, did I mess up? Is she going to turn me away like everyone else? Her eyes are so intense. Wait, are her eyes focusing like a camera? Maybe her quirk has something to do with zooming in and or out. That would definitely be helpful with doing any fine-tune work on an invention or scoping out a competitor. Blank canvas, Hatsum finally said. That's not what he expected. You, the girl said, gesturing to all of him. You're a blank canvas. You have no quirk and therefore have none of the drawbacks that come with them. Support items have to be heavily regulated and adjusted to each individual person, taking their own physical and mental needs, which quirks make even more complicated on top of that. With you though, anything is possible. Izuku couldn't help it. He really couldn't. The Midoriyas have always been emotional and he was no exception. At her words, tears started to well up in his eyes and a wobbly smile planted on his face. She didn't turn him away. Didn't tell him it was impossible. She believed. Does that mean you'll teach me? He asked, wiping away his tears. You betcha, Hiro-kun, she declared, smiling before turning back to the trash. Izuku blushed at the nickname. Oh, by the way, you're right. My quirk is Zoom. The greenet blushed even harder. Damn it, I was mumbling again. The teens continued to talk and work through the garbage, ignorant of having an audience. Kneeling on a fire escape high on the building across from the beach was a man hiding in the shadows of the alleyway. Ever since talking to the boy who aspired to become a true hero, Stain had been checking up on him to see what the teen would do with his words. It seems you've assigned yourself quite a project, little hero. I wonder what you will do once others notice your work. Will you remain humble or let the attention go to your head like all the other fakes? Your words that day were ones of someone with a true hero's heart, but there is still a chance of corruption. I will reserve my judgment for the time being. The hero killer watched the hero-to-be and the other teen work until the sun began to set. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared from the sky, the man stood up and cast one last look at the beach before turning toward the city. With the coming of night, it was time for Stain to continue his mission. After that day, Izuku's routine changed to include training with Hatsum. He still worked on cleaning the beach every day, but 3 days a week, he would stop by Hatsum's lab before going to the beach. He had also introduced the girl to his mother and explained what he had in mind. Inko seemed a little hesitant but as always supported her son. She at first was unsure about the eccentric girl but quickly warmed to the inventor's antics, finding them endearing. The first time in her lab was overwhelming to say the least. There was just so much stuff in there and Izuku didn't understand a single one. The pinkette was patient but enthusiastically eager to share her knowledge with him. She explained every step and demonstrated every tool until he could do it competently on his own. When Izuku made his first successful gadget, he was so proud of himself. He had taken an old kitchen timer and a joke hand buzzer he had rescued from the beach, wanting to combine the timer aspect with the buzz factor. When he was finished, he had a small disc that was half the size of a hockey puck in diameter and thickness. There was a dial on the top and when the timer would run out, the entire disc would vibrate for a few seconds. Wasn't anything special, just a simple little thing. But he made it with his own 2 hands without Hatsum's help. A small party was held at the Midoriya house to celebrate that day. It was also the day that the girl declared they were friends and that friends don't call each other by their family names. From then on Hatsum became Mei-chan and she called him either Izuku or Hiro-kun. It was a very nice change compared to the other nickname he was ever given by a friend. One obstacle Izuku faced in the lab was inspiration. Mei seemed to constantly come up with new ideas with ease. Him on the other hand, not so much. Then again, he was only just starting in support. He turned to his notebook to see if his notes would help. Mei-chan, Izuku said. The pinkette turned off her blowtorch and turned her attention to him. Do you think it's possible to replicate a quirk with a support item? He looked up from his notes to see her expression of carnal excitement. Hiro-kun, you are a genius. After only a few weeks of working with Mei, Izuku's hope of becoming a hero was rekindled. He truly felt that he could do this. With all the free time that came with not having friends, Izuku had turned to studying to pass the time as he grew up. Because of that, he was a quick study and it didn't take him long to get the hang of figuring out how support items worked. Mei eagerly taught him everything she knew about building and programming and he soaked it all up like a sponge. He could do this. Already his mind was filled with ideas of what kinds of support items he could make for himself. And some that certain heroes could definitely use as an upgrade. As he was lost in his thoughts about the future on his way home one day, Izuku found his feet had brought him to a park. It was later in the evening so the park was mostly empty. Izuku knew this park well, having so many memories of playing here as a kid when Kaken was still his friend. Then on top of that so many more memories when the blonde would bully and belittle him as they grew older and further apart. It hurt to see leftover scorch marks on various trees and playground equipment, painful memories of how they got there still fresh in his mind even after all these years. They reminded him that his friend was no longer his friend and how he didn't even see Izuku on the same level as him. Shaking himself out of that downward spiral of thought, Izuku noticed he wasn't alone. Across the way was a boy sitting on the swings. He seemed to be around Izuku's age, but had a different middle school uniform. Mizudafa Middle School, maybe? His hair was black, about shoulder length, and he had some bangs that hung over his face. Izuku walked forward to get a better look because he had never seen the boy around here before. Also because the boy looked sad. "Hello," Izuku said, calmly so he didn't startle the boy too bad. The black-haired boy still jumped slightly and looked up at the greenette with red eyes. Get it? Scar over his right eye and Izuku wondered how he got it. Quirk accident? Or maybe no. Not now. Can I sit here? He indicated to the swing next to the boy, who gave a small nod as he looked at Izuku in confusion. Izuku sat down on the swing and turned his head to look at the other boy. "My name is Midoriya Izuku. I haven't seen you around here before. What's your name?" The boy looked at his for a second, seemingly in a stupor, before shaking himself out of it. "Sorry, this is my first time at this park. I was just wandering and kinda got myself lost. I'm Kirishima Aijuru." "Nice to meet you, Kirishima-kun," Izuku said with a friendly smile. "If you're lost, I can help you out. I live around here so I know the area pretty well." "Hey, thanks man. That's super manly of you," Kirishima said, a slight smile on his face. He noticed the boy's teeth were pointy and reminded him of a shark. Did that have something to do with his quirk? Was he a shark or did it? No. Stop analyzing him. Now was not the time for that. He mentally shook himself out of the analysis spiral as the boy continued. "So, you live around here?" Kirishima asked. "Yeah, I've lived here since I was born," Izuku replied, starting to swing slightly. "I would play in this park all the time as a kid." "Really? I bet you made a lot of friends over the years," Kirishima said, smiling. But it dropped when Izuku looked away in a grimace and stopped swinging. The black-haired boy looked concerned at the reaction. "What's wrong?" "Well," Izuku started. He took a deep breath and slowly let it out, turning back to the other boy with a sad smile. "Actually, I don't really have any friends. Not at school anyway. But I do have one friend outside of school." Or rather Mei-chan just kind of declared it as fact and left it at that. "Sorry to hear that. But at least you got one friend," Kirishima said. He stopped for a moment, a nervous look on his face before he asked his next question. "If you don't mind me asking, why don't you have any friends at school? I would figure that someone who's lived here as long as you would have at least one." "I don't mind," Izuku replied. He took another deep breath to steady himself. "The kids at school, they don't really like me. They make fun of my dream of wanting to become a hero, because they think I'm too weak to do it since I don't have a flashy, strong quirk. They tell me it's impossible and don't like that I won't give up on it." "Dude, that is so unmanly," Kirishima said, a frown on his face. "You can't bash someone's dreams like that. Like my idol says, as long as a man's got a chivalrous heart, his quirk's got nothing to do with it. No matter what your quirk is, as long as you got the heart, you can be a hero." Izuku knew he had heard that quote before, but where? Chivalrous heart? Who did I hear that from? Did you just quote the chivalrous hero, Crimson Riot? "Yeah," Kirishima exclaimed, pounding his fists together. Izuku noticed that. The other boy's skin changed and looked rock-like. Is that his quirk? Some kind of hardening effect? That could be very useful in defense during a battle. Like a human shield. It could also be used to break up rubble during rescue efforts if his skin could get hard enough. Not to mention it would add something extra to any attack he could do. After all, being hit by a rock hurts enough, but getting punched by a rock? But where do the teeth come in with the hardening? Perhaps it's a feature he inherited from one of his parents that doesn't actually connect to his quirk. Izuku had tried to resist going into an analysis spiral since he started talking to the boy. But like always, his brain just couldn't help itself and took all the available information to find out the answers it craved. He didn't notice that he was mumbling all of his observations out loud while the boy next to him started to blush. The greenet only broke out of his mumbled rant when a quiet, choked sob escaped the black-haired boy. "Hey, are you okay?" Izuku asked concerned. "You?" Kirishima started. His eyes were tearing up as he clutched his shirt over his heart in a hardened fist. He took a shake breath. "You really think my quirk is useful like that?" The greenet blushed as his eyes widened. "Crap, I said that out loud. I mean, yeah. Your quirk would be very useful as a hero. There's so many ways you can use it." "But it's just hardening my skin," Kirishima said, hardening said skin. "It's not flashy or anything. Not like quirks like All Might or Endeavor have. How useful could I be with just this?" He gestured to his hardened skin again as if it made his point. "It's like you just said," Izuku said, a kind smile on his face. "As long as a man's got a chivalrous heart, his quirk's got nothing to do with it." Kirishima let his quirk go as he looked at Izuku in awe. He then let out a chuckle and nervously scratched the back of his head. "Heh, I guess I should listen to my own advice, huh? Sometimes, you only need one person to finally tell you, yes, you can, to start your journey," Izuku shrugged. "I had started to lose hope too. Until recently, everyone in my life told me I couldn't be a hero. Including some heroes themselves. But finally, one person told me they believed that I could, and I know the value of that person's opinion on heroes. So, I'm going to do my best to prove to them that their belief in me isn't a waste." "So manly," Kirishima muttered, a gleam in his eye. He wiped away a manly tear. "Do you know what high school you want to go to? I'm going for you myself." "Me too," Izuku exclaimed. "What better place to become a hero, right?" The two teens shared a fist bump and smiled. "Anyway, it's getting late and I don't want my mom to worry," Izuku said, getting up from the swing. He offered his hand to help Kirishima up. "Ready for that help, lost boy?" Kirishima laughed as he took the greenet's hand. "You're right. Thanks for the pep talk, dude. Really helped me out." Izuku walked him to the nearest train station. They passed the time talking about heroes and other random topics. Izuku really enjoyed talking to someone else in a friendly way other than Mei. It was like having another friend. Wow, isn't that a sad thought? They walked right up to the ticket gate. "It was nice meeting you," Izuku said. He held out his hand for a fist bump which Kirishima enthusiastically returned. "Let's both do our best to follow our dreams. I'll see you in you." With one last wave, the other boy headed off to his train and Izuku started for home. Maybe he had made a new friend today. But there was still room for doubt. Kirishima didn't know he was quirkless after all. What utter bullshit. The universe seriously just couldn't give him a break for once. It wasn't enough that he was denied a quirk, was ostracized by his peers, and practically no one believed in his dream. No, every step of the way had to be paved with more potholes to try and trip up his resolve. In the Hero Practical exam, support items are allowed under permission of the UA faculty as long as the support item directly aids in the proper use of an applicant's quirk. Any support item that does not directly affect a quirk is barred from the exam. Direct from the guidelines for the Hero Practical exam, Izuku was already being told no, indirectly, that he didn't have what they wanted in their hero students. Well, if there goes any chance of me passing the Hero Practical. There was no way they would allow him to use any of his support items since he had no quirk to influence. This was a setback for sure, but Izuku still had a plan. In his research about the school and the various processes of entering the different departments, Izuku found an alternate route. It wasn't well known and it didn't happen often, but if a student in a course other than the hero course did well enough in the sports festival, they could be offered a transfer if they so desired and the school was impressed enough. It was risky, but if Izuku was barred from using what he needed to pass the hero practical, he would show them that a quirk wasn't necessary to be a hero at the sports festival. It was the only option he had. At least they didn't have any policies that forbid quirkless students from applying at all. It had been about 2 months when Katsuki finally decided to confront Izuku. Despite calling him useless and telling him he wanted nothing to do with the quirkless boy, the blonde remained persistently nosy about his life. It was confusing to say the least how the other boys seemed to hate him and yet demand answers about his activities as if he had a right to them. Then again, Katsuki felt that he had a right to everything. As Izuku became better friends with Mei, he finally understood that what the two childhood friends had was no longer a friendship. Just a bully and his victim. The blonde was no longer the Kaken that Izuku knew from his youth. Now, he was Katsuki who seemed to have a life's mission to push him down, below the explosive teen where he supposedly belonged. "What the f have you been doing after school, Deku?" Katsuki demanded, using his height to tower over the shorter boy. It was posturing that Izuku was well used to after all these years. It no longer affected him as it used to. He refused to back down. "How is that any of your business?" Izuku retorted, green eyes staring firmly into those fiery red ones. Ignoring his question, Katsuki stepped closer. "You better not be FING training to be a hero, Deku. You know it's impossible." "Do I? Or is that just your ego talking?" Izuku shot back. He was sick and tired of the blonde putting him down like this. "Don't even if they think of trying for you, nerd," Katsuki threatened, eyes twitching at the remark. "There's no way a quirkless Deku like you could ever pass the hero practical." "You're right," Izuku said, looking into Katsuki's eyes again with a look of determination. "There isn't. But I'm not applying to the hero course. I'm applying for the support course." Katsuki was stunned into silence for only a moment. He clicked his tongue and stepped away from the other boy. "Ah, the support course? So, you finally accepted your shitty but could never become a hero." Izuku adjusted his backpack and said, "I didn't say I was giving up on becoming a hero. I may not be taking the hero exam, but that isn't the only way into the hero course." "What are you effing talking about, shitty nerd?" Katsuki asked, an edge to his voice. "Not telling," Izuku replied as he started to walk away. He glanced over his shoulder with a coy smile. After all, it would ruin the surprise. "Bye, Katsuki." He left the fuming explosive boy behind and headed home to continue working on his projects. The blonde didn't notice until he had already left that the greenet hadn't called him by a nickname. Katsuki couldn't place the sour feeling in his chest from the realization. The months flew by as Izuku and Mei prepared for the entrance exam. He continued to clean the trash, sorting out anything that could be useful in the lab. When it got down to the bigger pieces like furniture or refrigerators, Mei eagerly volunteered to help out. He appreciated the help, but he knew she only did it because it gave her an excuse to test out some of her babies. It didn't bother him in the least though. Whatever made it easier to get them into the truck. The two aspiring support students worked diligently on their projects. Izuku was learning fast under Mei's tutelage. She sometimes gave too much information than what he needed, giving what he called the encyclopedia answer, but she taught him well regardless. When he had made his first successful prototype for what he planned to submit for the support practical, Mei treated him to ice cream in celebration. They worked tirelessly to perfect their SBMSN designs in preparation for the support practical demonstration. Stressed that presentation was also key. The support item itself had to work, of course, but making a good impression was important too. The Pinkette planned to be as flashy as possible, including all the bells and whistles in a boisterous presentation, while the Greenet planned to impress in a more subtle way. Between prototypes, the two would also work on projects they hoped to continue once they got into UA. They looked forward to using the resources UA offered rather than having to rely on literal garbage for spare parts. Izuku came up with several ideas for replicating a quirk with support items. He was already developing some prototypes that he planned to perfect in UA. With so many projects, time seemed to pass by quickly. About a week before the exam, the beach was finally clean. Izuku threw the last piece of garbage into the back of the truck. Inko and Mei had come with him to congratulate him on his accomplishment. His mom insisted on a commemorative picture and took a photo of Izuku sporting a tired yet satisfied smile and a peace sign with the clean beach behind him. They drove the truck to the dump for the last time. Or at least until someone tried to start dumping their trash there again. Izuku planned to periodically check on the beach and clean up any litter he found. That night, they celebrated with a delicious meal of katsudon and Izuku went to bed with a smile. Izuku! Inko yelled as she entered the apartment. Izuku ran out of the living room to meet her, thinking something was wrong, only to have a newspaper shoved into his face. They wrote about that beach you cleaned up. Sure enough, on the front page was a picture of the once again pristine beach and there were already people playing and enjoying the water. There was a small, before image in the corner and a story about a mysterious benefactor who cleaned the beach and there were questions as to who did the selfless deed. Izuku smiled at that. He did it. He helped. People were happy and that was more than enough for him. Should I call the news station and tell them it was you? Inko asked. No, Izuku replied, a soft smile on his face. I didn't do it for the credit. I did it to help people and make them smile when it was finally done. This is enough for me. He handed the paper back to his mom and returned to the couch, watching the news while he studied over his notes. Inko watched him go before looking down at the newspaper. With a determined nod to herself, her mind was made up. Tomorrow she was going to go shopping for something to frame the article along with the picture she took that day. The public may never know that Izuku cleaned the beach. But she would. A few nights later, Izuku was fast asleep in bed when he woke to an incessant tinking sound. It took him a while, but once he was partially awake, he noticed the sound was coming from his window. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, Izuku got out of bed to find out what the noise was. On the windowsill he found a note. Meet me on the roof. Stain. Stain? What could he want? Izuku questioned out loud, brow scrunched in confusion. A little uncertain if it was a good idea or not, he eventually decided to see what the man wanted with him. Izuku put on a dark green hoodie over his pajamas made up of a tank top and sweatpants. He grabbed his keys and his phone, then left his room. He quietly made his way to the kitchen for a glass of water before leaving. As he drank from the tap, he eyed the frying pan in the drying rack next to the sink. Well, if it worked for a recluse long-haired princess, it'll work for me. It wouldn't be much of a defense against the hero killer, but it would bring him comfort having some kind of weapon with him. The greenet didn't think the man would hurt him after his words of encouragement. But it would be completely idiotic to meet the man empty-handed. Not that actually deciding to meet him on the roof was all that smart to begin with. Grabbing the frying pan and putting on his signature red shoes, Izuku left his apartment and quietly locked the door to not disturb his mother. He made his way up the stairs towards the door that led to the roof. Cautiously, he opened it and the hinges creaked from lack of use, making him cringle. He hesitantly walked onto the roof and looked around for any sign of the man. You actually came, a voice called out behind him. Izuku spun around to find the hero killer standing on the roof of the opposite building, who then jumped down towards him. I had thought you might not have come. Yet here you are. Whether it is from bravery or foolishness, I'm glad you agreed to meet with me. Stain walked towards Izuku, who took a step back and brandished his frying pan. The man raised a brow at the action but didn't comment. He would have been disappointed in the boy if he had come completely unprepared, although his choice in weapon was odd to say the least. To put the boy at ease, Stain stopped walking towards him and instead headed to sit on the edge of the roof. He planted himself with his feet dangling down the side of the building and stared out over the city. Cautiously, the boy joined him but kept a few feet of distance between them, eyeing the man the entire time. What did you want T to meet about? Izuku asked, nerves coming through as he kept the frying pan between them. Stain slowly reached into his pants pocket and pulls out a folded piece of newspaper. He placed it between the two of them and retreated his hand. The greenet hesitantly reached out and picked it up. Unfolding the paper, he saw it was a clipping of the article about the beach. An unknown benefactor took it upon themselves to help the community by cleaning the beach, the man stated, side-eyeing the boy next to him. When that article was released, I waited to see if someone would claim the recognition for the deed. Yet no one did. Oh really? That was very nice of them, Izuku said, folding the paper back up and placing it down between them. And maybe they did it just to help out. Little hero, I know that it was you, Stain deadpanned, taking the clipping back. Was? Why you do? The teen exclaimed, his cheeks turning red. I've been keeping an eye on you since we met, the hero killer revealed. I watched you clean the beach every now and then. I wanted to see if you would actually follow through on such an endeavor. Most would have given up quickly, yet you powered through until the end. Now that's not creepy. Being followed by a man who happens to be a villain who kills heroes? Not creepy at all. I wanted to help, Izuku declared, his voice squeaking a little. The man chuckled. I knew it would be a lot of work, but I thought that if no one else was doing anything about it, why not me? A noble thought to have, little hero, Stain commented. Tell me, once the article came out about the finished beach, why didn't you call in to say it was you? Izuku let out a nervous chuckle, a light blush on his face. When it came out, my mom asked if I wanted to say it was me. But I told her I didn't want to. I didn't do it for the credit. I did it to help. Like I told you before. He looked up at the hero killer with a small shaky smile but confidently looked him in the eye. I don't care about rankings or popularity. I've only ever wanted to help. Izuku did his best not to look away as a smile spread across Stain's face. It was creepy as it grew wider and wider. His brown eyes seemed to glow red in the moonlight. The teen found it difficult to keep eye contact, but he didn't avert his eyes from the man who believed in him. There it is. The selflessness of a true hero, Stain proclaimed. I knew you had the heart of one. The man stood up and turned to the greenet. Izuku scrambled to his feet and held up the frying pan like a shield. But the hero killer made no move towards him. You're doing well, little hero, Stain said as he looked down at the hero-to-be. Even now when you are still a little fledgling, you have already shown me you are worthy. I look forward to seeing what kind of hero you will become. The man turned to leave, before he paused and glanced back at the teen. May I ask for your name, little hero? Stain asked, strangely polite for a villain. Midoriya Izuku, he replied on instinct, before clapping a hand over his mouth with a squeak. Crap, I did not mean to tell him that. The hero killer hummed before saying, Akaguro Kaizome. Ha! Izuku said, lowering his hand. My name, little hero, the man replied, a smaller, less creepy grin on his face. With that, Stain left and Izuku was once again alone on a roof, in a daze trying to process what happened. This was it. The day of the entrance exam for UA. Izuku was still bitter about the rules on support item use for the hero practical, since it prevented him from being able to use the tools he needed to effectively use his skills. For a second, he had considered trying anyway until he found out about the robots. Without a quirk and barred from using support items because of that, it meant that he would have pretty much no chance of passing if he even tried. It was such an idiotic policy and he planned to bring it up to the principal if he ever got the chance. Also, just the idea of using robots was idiotic. Sure, it gave the applicants targets, but those with physical quirks had more of a chance of taking them down. Heck, even the pro hero Eraserhead didn't initially pass the entrance exam and only was able to transfer into the hero course after he won the sports festival in his first year. Something that Izuku also planned to do. Once he was in the support course, he could use his own inventions during the sports festival and show them that you don't need a quirk to be a hero. A quirk was just another tool that heroes can use. Since Izuku didn't have a quirk, he would make his own tools to help him in his goal. But first, he has to get into the support course. One step at a time. Izuku took a deep breath as he looked up at the gates of UA. His dream school. After all Might went here and he was still Izuku's idol despite what he said. With determination to prove the number one hero wrong, he made to take his first step towards the school. Before he could, Izuku heard an angry voice call out. Out of my way, Deku. Izuku spun around to find Katsuki walking towards him, a scowl on his face. The explosive boy had mostly ignored him since he confronted Greenit about trying for UA. This was the first time he was acknowledged by the other boy in months. "Oh, good morning, Katsuki. Let's both do our best." The blonde just walked past the greenet without another word. Izuku watched him go inside. They may never be friends, but even this was better than how Katsuki treated him before. Izuku accepted the other's actions for what it was, an improvement of sorts. Now, back to taking that first step. Apparently, focusing on one step at a time was too much because Izuku suddenly found himself tripping after that first step. This is how I die, I guess, he thought. He shut his eyes waiting for the collision to the ground, planning to lessen the impact with a well-practiced rolling move. But it never came. Izuku opened his eyes to find himself floating mid-trip. Flailing his arms, he spots a girl next to him smiling. "Sorry I used my quirk on you," she said cheerfully. She helped him down to the ground before pressing her hands together. The feeling of weightlessness disappeared after all her fingers touched. "But I figured it was bad luck to trip before the exam." Questions raced through Izuku's head, fascinated by the girl's quirk. But he bit them back because now wasn't the time for that. It's all right. Thanks for saving me. My name is Midoriya Izuku. It's nice to meet you." "My name is Uraraka Ochako. It's nice to meet you too." They exchanged small bows in greeting. "I'm going to head inside, but I hope to see you sometime. Good luck." Izuku waved at her as she walked away. He was a little proud of himself for talking to someone new. He barely even stuttered. Maybe they would see each other again if they both passed. No, not if when. Then he could ask her all his questions about her quirk. With more care this time, Izuku walked toward the school to check into his exams. But he couldn't help getting distracted. How could he not? He was finally in UA. Not as a student, yet, but being able to walk these halls was such an honor. He was looking around at anything and everything, trying to take in all the little details about UA as he could, when he ran into someone. "Oof," Izuku let out as he fell to the floor. "Great. Not only did I have to trip earlier, I just had to hit someone and make a fool of myself." He looked up to see a boy with gravity-defying purple hair sitting up and rubbing the back of his head. "Oh my gods, are you okay?" Izuku exclaimed. He scrambled to get up and offered his hand to the other boy. He looked at the hand confused with tired purple eyes that matched his hair and ignored it as he got up by himself. Izuku didn't mind as he continued rambling. "I'm so sorry I ran into you. I should have paid more attention to where I was going. I'm just so excited to actually be in the halls of UA and wasn't watching where I was going." "And I." "You sure talk a lot, don't you?" the other boy interjected, cutting off his rambling. Izuku blinked owlishly for a moment before he blushed in embarrassment. As he looked up at the other teen, all he could think was, "Dimon, he's tall." He scratched the back of his head nervously. Yes, sorry. And sorry for running into you. I hope I didn't disturb you too much. Gee, good luck on the exam." The other boy merely grunted in response and walked off. Izuku watched him leave for a moment before shaking out of his stupor and continuing on to his way. After getting his room assignment from the check-in point, he headed toward his testing site for the written exam. Room D, Izuku muttered as he searched for his room. Oh, there it is. UA had several different courses that student hopefuls could apply for. The most well-known was UA's Hero course, one that produced well-known heroes that ranked among the top 10, including All Might himself. There was also General Studies, Support course, and Business course. Each department had their own setup for the practical exam, but all departments would take the same written test. As Izuku entered the room, his eye was drawn to a familiar head of purple hair. The boy he had run into earlier was in the same testing group as him. Well, I didn't make the best first impression, but maybe we could be friends? He took a deep breath to steady himself and walked over to the other boy. Hello, he managed to stutter out as he approached the taller teen. The other watched him out of the corner of his eye as Izuku took the desk next to him, but the purple-haired teen didn't say a word. I am sorry about earlier again. I'm kind of a klutz at all the time, but it's nice to see a familiar face. Even though it was because I made a huge fool of myself. My name is Midoriya Izuku. Nice to meet you. The greenet looked at the taller boy with a small nervous smile. The purple-hair boy studied him for a few moments, seeming to search for something. Whether he found it or not, Izuku didn't know, but the other boy finally spoke. "You do talk a lot." At the comment, Izuku blushed and looked down at his desk. His mind started to spiral, thinking that maybe he won't be able to be friends with the boy when the other teen spoke again. "Shinso Hitoshi." "Pleasure." Izuku's head shot up as he looked at Shinso, a look of shock on his face. Then he smiled and said, "Hi Shinsen." Shinso gave him a small nod. "So, what course are you applying for?" Izuku asked, getting out his pen case. "All Might themed, of course. I'm going for the support course myself. I would have gone for the hero course too, but with the way they skew T towards physical quirks, there's no way I would pass." "What do you?" Shinso started but stopped when the proctor for the exam walked into the room. With all the studying and preparation with Mei, Izuku was pretty confident with his answers to the written test. Plus, with his quirk analysis and research into heroes, he was able to answer the questions on laws and regulations with ease. He finished with about 10 minutes to spare and spent the rest of the time checking over his answers. Once time was up, there was a short break before the practical exams. Izuku hoped to find Mei, but there were so many people and being shorter than most of them didn't help. With a sigh, he relented and decided to move to a less crowded area. He would see Mei later. "Hey," a voice called to him. Looking up, the greenet saw Shinso walking towards him. "Oh hey, Shinso-kun," Izuku said with a friendly smile. "How did the test go for you?" "It was all right," Shinso replied, shrugging as he scratched the back of his head. "The general stuff was fine, but I struggled on the law part a bit. I didn't know they would be testing on things like that before getting in. A hero school would be the place to learn about hero laws, right?" "That's true, but maybe they asked those as a way to gauge how much we knew about that before you," Izuku surmised, a hand on his chin and a thoughtful look. "I was fine with them, but I've been researching that for my hobby." "Hobby?" the purple-haired boy asked. "Oh, I like to analyze quirks," Izuku chirped, taking out his notebook. It had seen better days, but it couldn't be helped with a certain explosive blonde constantly messing with him. "I find quirks really interesting, so I like to analyze them. Figuring out the strengths and weaknesses, ways to improve them, and strategize the best way to use them in different situations. Here, look." The shorter boy offered his notebook to the taller one. It was open to his notes on the number 4 hero, best genist. Shinso read through the notes that covered the 2-page spread along with a sketch of the hero. There were questions and theories that he had never thought to ask or think about. Yet as he read through them, they seemed like really good ideas and questions to ask. This guy is smart. This chicken scratch is pretty good," the purple-haired boy snarked, smirking at the other boy who gave an offended squawk. He chuckled and handed the notebook back. "By the way, what did you mean there was no way you could pass? Do you have a passive quirk?" "Oh, so. Izuku replied, putting his notebook back in his bag. He looked away from Shinso, nervously kicking the ground. "Actually, I don't have a quirk at all." The last sentence came out only as a whisper, barely loud enough for the purple boy to hear. "Huh." The shorter boy hesitantly looked Shinso in the eye and said, "I'm quirkless." "Huh." There was no other reply that Shinso could think of as he processed what he heard. The chimes sounded for the practicals to start soon and the boys went their separate ways. Izuku was nervous about how Shinso would think about him now that he knew. He hoped the other boy won't reject him like everyone else had since elementary school. But that was a worry for later. There was a support practical he needed to finish before having to worry about that. 4 months, Mei and Izuku had practiced making their SBMSNS for the support practical, perfecting their designs and streamlining the production. All in preparation for this day. They were given an hour and a half to create a support item and then had to present it to a panel of judges. Mei had decided to make a jet packet modeled after the One Pro Hero air jet used. She loved Izuku's idea of trying to replicate quirks with support items, and he kept assuring her it was fine for them both to work on that. It was his idea, but he didn't mind if she also wanted to make babies with the same idea in mind. In the end, whatever they made was to help heroes, and that's all Izuku cared about. Izuku, on the other hand, went a different route. He did intend to make quirk replicating support items once he was in UA, but he also had another goal in mind. The Greenit wanted to help heroes to improve or upgrade their current support items. Technology was constantly evolving and it would greatly benefit heroes to update their support gear to keep with the times and take advantage of any new gadgets and doohickeys that develop. The particular support item he decided on was for one of his favorite heroes. It wasn't for All Might because all of his gear was designed by his friend David Shield, who kept the #1 hero up to date just fine. No, he went with someone not well known and who desperately needed an upgrade. After all the practice runs he had done, he felt like he could make this support item in his sleep by now. It didn't take him the entire hour and a half, but it gave him plenty of time to test the support item out and fix any bugs he noticed. Before he knew it, it was time for the applicants to present their SBMs. Next applicant, Midoriya Izuku. Please proceed into the presenting area, a proctor called out. Taking a deep breath, Izuku stood up, grabbing his bag and carefully carried his SBMsen into the room. Before him was a table with 3 judges behind it and an empty chair in front of the table facing the 3. The Greenit walked forward and sat down on the chair, placing his bag on the ground next to him. Midoriya Izuku, correct? The middle judge asked. Izuku gave a nod. Well then, what do you have for us today? This is it. Deep breath in, then up. You can do this. He walked up to the judge's table and placed the yellow goggles in front of them before returning to his seat. What you have before you is an upgraded version of the support item worn by the underground hero Eraserhead. There was instant murmuring between the judges at that declaration. The middle judge picked up the support item and turning it this way and that as they inspected it. Izuku walked them through the different upgrades and design changes he had made and why. Everything was in perfect working order. These goggles are impressive, the right judge said, taking the goggles from the middle judge for a closer look. It's also impressive that you even know who Eraserhead is, the left judge commented. Considering how much the man hates the media and avoids it like the plague. How do you know about him, Midoriya-kun? The middle judge asked, writing a note on the paper in front of them. My hobby is to analyze quirks, Izuku said, reaching into his bag for his notebook. He flipped to the pages he had on the hero and handed the notebook to the judges. I have always been fascinated about quirks, and since I don't have one of my own, I started to analyze the quirks around me as well as those of heroes. It's true that there isn't much on Eraserhead through the media, but there are still a few videos of him fighting criminals in the far corners of the internet. I was able to find them and analyze how he fights and what his support item was. The middle judge looked at the front of the notebook. Hero analysis for the future? No. Tell us, Midoriya-kun, do you want to be a hero? Yes, I do, Izuku replied, his hands formed into fists as they rested on his knees. I would have applied for the hero practical, but there is a policy that support items can only be used to help channel a quirk. Since I don't have one, I wouldn't be allowed to use any in the practical. Therefore, I decided to go for the support course instead. I see, the middle judge simply said. If you could, Midoriya-kun, please tell us why you focused on Eraserhead, the left judge asked. They had taken the notebook from the middle one and flipped through the pages. You have quite a lot of heroes in here, yet you chose to make these for him specifically. Any particular reason why? Of the few videos I was able to find of the hero in action, I noticed something that I found inspiring, Izuku replied. It was something that gave him hope that his dream was possible when he found himself starting to doubt. Eraserhead's quirk is Erasure, which allows him to erase the quirk of someone he's looking at, sans mutant-type quirks. If you think about it, by doing so, Eraserhead turns the fight from being quirk against quirk into a quirkless fight. Erasure does allow him this edge in the fight, but other than that, all of his skills are the same as someone fighting quirkless. The judges seemed to be impressed by the answer and quietly talked amongst themselves before turning back to the boy. What are your goals for UA, Midoriya-kun? The right judge asked. If I am admitted into the support course, I have 2 goals in mind, Izuku said, holding up his hand to count them off. 1. To make other upgraded support items for heroes and students. 2. To create quirk replicating support items. Quirk replicating support items? The left judge questioned. If you think about it, quirks are tools, Izuku explained, placing his hand back on his leg. As are support items. Usually, support engineers have made support items to aid in the use of the quirk. However, I believe, with using my analysis to understand the mechanics of how other people's quirks work, I should be able to make a support item that can replicate a quirk. Oh, how so? The right judge asked, eyes full of intrigue at the idea. It wouldn't work with all quirks like mental or response-based ones, Izuku replied. But certain quirks could be recreated using today's technology. For example, my dad has fire breath, and if I wanted to replicate it, I could create a mask or mouthpiece of some sort to produce a similar effect as the original quirk. It wouldn't be an exact copy, more like a close facsimile. A very intriguing idea, the middle judge stated, placing their elbows on the table and setting their chin on their interlaced fingers. I believe that about wraps it up. I do have one last question though. Midoriya-kun, if you had the chance to transfer into the hero course, would you? Yes, I would, Izuku said without hesitation. He looked confidently into the judge's eyes, his own green ones showing his sheer determination. Very well, the middle judge said, pulling his hands apart. Well then, that's all we need for now. We will keep your SBMSN for further inspection and it will be returned with your results. They should show up in about a week. Actually, could I make a special request? Izuku asked, nervously. If it's possible after you check the goggles, could they be given to Eraserhead instead? I did make them for him after all. The judges had a quiet discussion that barely lasted a minute. The middle judge turned back to the greenet. We don't usually do this, but if your SBMSN checks out, we'll make sure Eraserhead gets them. Thank you. Izuku chirped, a smile growing on his face. Is there anything else? No, you are free to go, Midoriya-kun, the left judge said, holding out the notebook to the greenet. Izuku took it and placed it back in his bag. He gave his thanks to the judges and bowed before leaving the room. He hoped that went as well as he thought it did. Taking a deep breath, Izuku walked out of the building, hoping that it wouldn't be for the last time. After the support practical demonstration was finished and all prototypes had been submitted, Izuku found himself walking towards the entrance of UA. He was looking forward to going home for a well-deserved nap after all the stress of test taking and presenting his support item to the judges. He really hoped they liked his SBMSN. As he approached the gate, Izuku was once again greeted by a familiar mop of purple hair. Shinso was leaning against the gate looking at his phone. Did he wait for me? With a smile and a skip in his step, Izuku approached the taller boy. That is, until he saw the slight grimace on the other's face. So, he slowly walked up to him. Hey, Shinso-kun. Izuku greeted, still nervous about the other's reaction to his quirklessness. How did your tests go? Shinso glanced at the greenet, seeming to act the same as he did before. It's like you said, he said, putting away his phone. Skewed towards physical quirks. Izuku sighed. Yeah, the bias towards physical quirks is annoying. You said it, Shinso said, moving to walk out the gate. Izuku fell in step with him as they headed towards the train station. Those who are blessed with a heroic quirk get everything handed to them on a silver platter. Unlike those with a villainous quirk like me. Villainous quirk? Izuku said, looking at his friend with concern. What do you mean villainous? My quirk is a villain's quirk, Midoriya, Shinso snapped, making the shorter boy flinch. They stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, causing others to glare at them in annoyance as they walked around the pair. It's a perfect quirk for a villain. That's what everyone told me growing up. I wanted to get into the hero course to prove them wrong. But there's no such thing as a villainous quirk, Shinsugen. Izuku exclaimed, his hands gesturing animatedly. Have you ever used your quirk on others? To hurt or take advantage of them? Well, no. Did you ever want to use your quirk like that? Or plan to in the future? Izuku persisted. Of course not, Shinso tried to retort only to be interrupted again. Then your quirk isn't villainous, Shinso-kun, Izuku declared, staring firmly into the other's purple eyes. The quirk does not define the person. Every quirk has the potential to be heroic or villainous depending on how a person uses it. You say you never have or ever want to use your quirk in a villainous way. Therefore, your quirk isn't villainous because you don't want to be a villain. Simple as that. Midoriya, you don't even know what my quirk is, Shinso shot back. Simple. Is that? Izuku punctuated each word by poking the other boy in the chest. It doesn't matter what your quirk is, Shinso-kun. If you, in your heart, want to be a hero and use your quirk for good, then your quirk will never be villainous. Shinso just stared at the greenet in awe, his mouth slightly open in shock at the declaration. Then he just started laughing, so hard that he hunched over with his hands grasping at his stomach. Izuku wasn't sure what the other was laughing about and just looked at him confused, his head tilted to the side a bit. Eventually, the purple-haired teen got a hold of himself. "Oh man, where have you been all my life?" Shinso asked breathlessly. Izuku blushed a little at the question because of the usual romantic connotations behind it. "You're the first person to ever tell me that, and you don't even know what my quirk is. It's brainwashing, by the way." "Whoa, brainwashing? Really?" Izuku chirped, an excited smile on his face. It was so bright Shinso found himself needing to squint. That would be an amazing quirk for hero work. You could break up hostage situations with no collateral damage. Or calm people down if they were having a panic attack. Not to mention the interrogation possibilities. You could also stop people from hurting themselves. Or you could. "Midoriya," Shinso called out. "Wah." That was all he could say before a cloud of haziness filled his mind. It was like he was in a fog. His body felt heavy yet also strangely light at the same time. Time seemed to stand still, but as soon as the fog came it left. Izuku blinked back to the present to find a blushing Shinso staring at him, hiding slightly behind the hand on his face. "Please stop complimenting my quirk," Shinso pleaded. "I'm not used to it." Sorry." Izuku squeaked, blushing in embarrassment. "Was that your quirk just now?" "Yeah, I found a new use for it by the way," Shinso said, pulling his hand away from his face. Izuku looked at him curiously and the purple-haired boy started to smirk. "It's perfect for stopping your fanboy rambling." The greenets swatted at the other playfully. They continued on their way to the train station, chatting about heroes and whatnot. Before going their separate ways, the pair exchanged phone numbers to keep in touch. With a last wave, they went to their respective platforms. Izuku spent the night telling his mom all about the exams and that he made a new friend. During that week of waiting for their results, Izuku finally got to ask Mei about her experiences during the entrance exam. Let's just say she may or may not have terrified the judges by flying straight at them while demonstrating the jetpack. He also was texting Shinso, who was apparently an insomniatic meme master and would send him the weirdest things at all hours of the day and night. Since all of them applied to UA, they all agreed to meet up. When their letters arrived and opened them together. On a Sunday, the letters finally came and the three decided to meet at the Midoriya household. Mei had become a regular after becoming friends with Izuku. Well, whenever she could be dragged away from her lab. However, this would be Shinso's first time there and Izuku wondered how his newest friend would react to his doting mom and Mei-chan with all her eccentric tendencies. Hitoshi hesitated in front of the door to the home, nervous about meeting not one but two new people, Midoriya's mom and his crazy-sounding pink-haired friend. This was his first time meeting a friend's parent and he worried about messing things up. Midoriya might think his quirk wasn't villainous, but that doesn't necessarily mean his mom shared the same opinion. Not to mention the greenet's other friend. What would she think? One more deep breath, he finally built up enough courage and knocked on the door. There was the shuffling of feet and the door opened to the sunshine smile of his green-haired friend. "So bright. I need to bring sunglasses next time." "Hey, Shinso-kun. You made it." Midoriya chirped, pulling the other inside. Hitoshi took off his shoes at the entrance and walked further into the house. A green-haired woman walked out from the kitchen and smiled when she saw Hitoshi. Her smile was just as bright as Midoriya's and left no doubt that this was the other boy's mother. "Hello, I'm Midoriya Inko, Izuku's mother," the woman greeted. "You must be the Shinso he's told me about?" Midoriya blushed as Hitoshi gave him a side glance before looking back to the woman. "I'm Shinso Hitoshi. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Midoriya." He gave a small bow in greeting. "Oh, none of that formal stuff now," she said, waving her hand dismissively. Please call me Inko. Or Auntie, a pink-haired girl interjected, hugging Inko from behind. Hiya. The name's Hatsume. Nice to meet ya, Hitoshi. Call me Mei. She detached from the mother and practically shoved her hand in Hitoshi's face. He blinked at it owlishly before hesitantly shaking it. Mei-chan, don't overwhelm him. Midoriya scolded, pulling her away from the taller boy. Sorry about her. She gets overexcited a lot, but she means well. Hopefully her using your first name doesn't bother you. She doesn't do family names with friends. Hitoshi simply shrugged, figuring she was going to do what she wanted. She already thinks of me as a friend? It's alright. I don't mind. What about you? Oh, you can call me Izu if you like, Midoriya stuttered, looking at the ground bashfully. Then you can call me Hitoshi. Izuku looked up at him and asked, Does this mean we're friends? Duh, the brainwasher replied flatly, though he himself was surprised to be making friends. Inko snickered at the exchange. Shall we get this letter opening party started? Hatsume asked, turning from the group and walking toward the living room. The other three followed, and Hitoshi was led into a cozy room with a couch and a couple of chairs. There was a TV, bookshelves, and pictures hanging on the walls. The table next to the couch had an impressive assortment of snacks. Mei and Inko sat in the chairs while Izuku and Hitoshi took the couch. Do we want to open them one at a time or all at once? The pinkette asked, pulling out her letter. How about all at once? Izuku suggested, pulling out his own and Hitoshi following suit. It'll be like ripping off a bandage. Your comparison isn't very encouraging, Izuku, Hitoshi deadpanned. Inko giggled at the comment. On the count of 3? The greenette asked, getting nods from the other two. Okay, here it goes. 1, 2, 3. At the same time, the three teens opened their letters and read the papers inside. There was a pregnant silence as the teens read. Inko's eyes flicked between them, looking for any kind of reaction. The anticipation was killing her. What did they say? The mother asked, unable to wait any longer. I got into the support course. Izuku piped up first, looking from the letter to his mom with a smile. They said they were impressed with my SBMSN and looked forward to my quirk replication research. I got in too, Mei exclaimed, beaming and shot up to hug her fellow inventor. Oh my gosh, we are going to be making so many babies together. Inko blushed at the comment while Izuku quickly berated her. Mei-chan. Context. She doesn't mean actually babies, Hitoshi-kun. That's just what she calls her. The greenette paused as he took in the grim expression on his friend's face. The taller boy hadn't looked up from his letter and seemed to not have been paying any attention to the others. Hitoshi-kun? Are you okay? There was a few more minutes of silence before the purple-haired boy spoke up. He didn't get into the hero course. Tears immediately welled in Izuku's eye. Poor Hitoshi-kun. What are you going to do now? Hitoshi finally turned away from the letter to look into his green eyes. Go to UA, of course. Huh? Izuku said, confused. I said I didn't get into the hero course, Hitoshi said, as a smirk grew on his face. General studies on the other hand. Hitoshi-kun, you jerk. Izuku griped, smacking the other boy's arm who merely laughed in response. I thought we wouldn't be going to the same school. I was actually worried about you. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist, the taller boy snickered. Then he sobered up a little. I figured I wouldn't make the hero course. I did my best during the practical, but there was only so much I could do against robots. So, I applied for general studies as a backup. That way I could still go to UA. That was very practical of you, Hitoshi, Inko commented, making him blush slightly. I just thought it would be good to have a plan B, Hitoshi said, scratching his head. Guess I'll have to give up on being a hero though. You don't have to do that, Hitoshi-kun, Izuku said. The taller boy looked at the other confused. There's more than one way into the hero course. Hitoshi wasn't sure what to think of the coy smile on the shorter boy's face. After opening the letters, the four enjoyed the array of snacks and chatted happily until it was time for Hitoshi and Mei to go home. They all pitched in to clean up and put everything away. It was when they were all gathered around the front door that Hitoshi noticed the framed newspaper clipping. Huh, that's a weird thing to frame, thought the brainwasher. He walked towards it for a better look. Upon closer inspection, he found it was an article about a beach that had been cleaned up by some unknown person. Hitoshi remembered hearing about it from listening to his classmates' conversations, but never put much thought into it. Then he saw the picture of Izuku with the clean beach behind him. Izuku, Hitoshi called out, getting the greenet's attention. The shorter boy walked over to him. Yeah, Hitoshi-kun? Did you help clean up that beach? The purple-haired boy asked, pointing to the newspaper. Oh yeah, I did, Izuku replied, blushing a bit. I went for a run one day and noticed how much trash was there, so I decided to clean it. How long did it take? Hitoshi asked, studying the before and after pictures of the beach. About 10 months, I think, the greenet responded, his hand on his chin in thought. It would have been done sooner, but I only have 2 hands. The shorter boy chuckled to himself as he held up said hands. You cleaned the beach by yourself? Hitoshi said, his words sounding unsure because he was having a hard time comprehending the concept. This one boy cleaned a whole beach filled to the brim with garbage all by himself. Yes? Actually, Mei-chan helped some at the end with the really big pieces, but yeah, mostly just me. Izuku bashfully scratched his head, not looking at the other boy. Someone needed to, so why not me? Plus, now people are enjoying the beach again, which made all that hard work worth it. A warm smile replaced his bashful face as he looked at the newspaper. You certainly are one of a kind, Izuku, Hitoshi stated, smiling and shaking his head. The rest of the school year passed by quickly. All the third-year middle schoolers were eager for graduation at the end of March, followed by a week-long spring break before starting high school in April. After singing the school song, the graduation ceremony began. Row by row, class by class, the third years were called to the gym stage and handed their diplomas. As Izuku walked across the stage for his own, he could spot his mother crying in the crowd of parents in the back. He smiled and nodded at her as she wiped away tears of pride and took tons of pictures. Taking his certificate ceremoniously in each hand, Izuku bowed to the principal and vice principal before exiting the stage. The ceremony went on until all the graduating students returned to their seats. After several speeches from the principal, the vice principal, homeroom teachers, and a few Board of Education members, the now graduated students were finally free. Most other students gathered in their friend groups, talking, crying, taking pictures, and writing notes in each other's graduation albums. Underclassmen shared goodbyes with their upperclassmen and bouquets of flowers were everywhere. A bittersweet goodbye all around. But, since Izuku didn't have any friends in school, he left rather quickly with his mom to celebrate at home with Mei and Hitoshi. Of course, katsudon was served. The week of spring break was spent hanging with his 2 friends. Sometimes at Izuku's house, other times in Mei's lab. The greenet was already working on designing some kind of voice changer for Hitoshi. They had an in-depth discussion of the brainwasher's quirk, nailing down the weaknesses and brainstormed ways to fix them. It was one of the first projects Izuku planned to start on when the UA school year began, besides the gadgets he would be making for himself. Finally, the first day of high school came. Izuku woke up bright and early, eager to start his UA student career. After breakfast and brushing his teeth, he put on his UA uniform with pride. Everything was perfect except his tie. No matter how many times he tried readying it, the knot never came out right. One of the drawbacks of his dad having to work in the US was that he hadn't been around to teach his son things like this. With a sigh, he finally gave up and left the poorly done tie as is. A few pictures were taken by his mom as he prepared to leave. With his yellow backpack in hand and his beloved red shoes on his feet, Izuku gave one last hug to his mom before heading off to UA. The commute wasn't too bad. His house was just 2 stops away from the school by train. Once he was off the train, he headed to the designated spot his friends and he had agreed to meet at so they could walk into the school together. Izuku was the first to arrive and passed the time people watching as he waited for his friends. There were so many students with so many interesting quirks. His hands were itching to write everything he observed down. The greenet was so absorbed in his thoughts, he missed the person approaching behind him. Boo! Wah! Izuku yelled, flailing so much he fell over. He looked up to find Hitoshi smirking at him. "Oh, it's just you, Jay." "Hey there, fanboy, how's the weather down there?" the insomniac snarked, offering a hand to the other. "Ha. Very funny," the shorter boy said, taking his friend's hand and pulling himself up. He dusted off his pants and glared at the taller one. "Did you really have to do that right in my ear?" "Sorry, I just couldn't resist." "You were so out of it," Hitoshi chuckled, adjusting his bag. "Also, what is with that tie? It's a mess." "Maybe I like it this way." "Maybe it's my personal style," the greenet shot back, hands on his hips. "Sure, if your style is toddler ties." "Their first tie? Then yeah," the other teased. Izuku simply huffed a sigh at his comment. "If you two are done bickering, can we go in now? I can't wait to start in the support studio." The two boys looked to find that Mei had arrived while they were talking. Izuku greeted her cheerfully with a hug while Hitoshi simply nodded his head to her. Together the trio, or as Hitoshi has tried to dub them on multiple occasions, the three Freaketeers, walked into UA. The trio split for their separate classrooms, Hitoshi to General Studies Class 1C while Izuku and Mei went to Support Course Class 1H. They all agreed that they would meet for lunch later. Walking into 1H, seeing the blackboard and desks with other support students chatting, finally let it sink in. He made it. He was into UA. "Come on," Mei said, suddenly grabbing his hand and pulling him along. "Let's find seats in the back." "Why?" he asked, letting her guide him to the two back row seats near the window. "So, we can still work on our babies when the teacher isn't looking," she replied, plopping down in the seat nearest the window. "We have only 3 years in UA and I won't waste a single second of it." Izuku smiled and shook his head fondly, finding her hyper-focus on inventing whenever possible endearing. The Pinkette had such a pure passion for support and he was certain she would flourish in UA. The school was lucky to have her. Students continued to file in and it wasn't long when their homeroom teacher arrived. Izuku had a mini fanboy freak out when the excavation hero power loader walked into the classroom. Mei flicked his arm to stop him from falling into a mumbling spiral. After the start of class greeting, the students sat back down in their chairs and gave the hero their full attention. "Good morning, class," Power Loader greeted. The students replied in kind. "My name is Maijima Higuri. You may know me as Pro Hero Power Loader. In UA and during class, please address me as Maijima-sensei." "Yes, Maijima-sensei," the class said in unison. Their homeroom teacher then began to explain about how the class would be run. Describing that morning classes would cover general topics like math and history, the only difference from other high schools was that they were taught by pro heroes. Izuku would try his very best not to geek out about that, but knowing him it was probably inevitable. Afternoon class time would be spent in the support studio, where they could start inventing their support items. Mei was especially excited for that, shaking in anticipation. This time it was Izuku's turn to flick her arm. Though turns out he didn't need to when their teacher announced they couldn't start using the studio until the next day, much to the Pinkette's disappointment. There was other talk about school policies and rules, where the students were allowed to go in regards to studios, labs, and gyms. When homeroom ended, Class 1H joined the rest of the school for the entrance ceremony. Most of the school, since there was an empty patch in the crowd where Class 1A should have been. Whatever they were doing, Izuku found himself wishing he was there with them. "Man, the principal can talk," he thought as the mouse-dog-bear thing rambled on and on. Surely what 1A was doing was way more interesting than this. Finally, Nizu ended his speech, which was followed by a few others from upperclassmen and various teachers welcoming the first years to UA. When the entrance ceremony ended, the students returned to their homerooms. As they waited for the lunch bell to ring, Izuku pulled out his notebook to write down some notes on his homeroom teacher and questions he wanted to ask. Mei was in her own little world beside him, dreaming up new ideas for babies to build. "Midoriya," Maijima-sensei called out, sitting at the desk in the front of the classroom. Izuku looked up to his teacher beckoning him with his hand. "Come here for a moment." Other students snickered at him for being called out by their teacher on the first day. But it couldn't be anything bad, right? He hadn't done anything wrong. The greenet stood up, taking his notebook with him, and walked to the front. "Why yes, Majima-sensei?" the first year asked nervously. "Relax, you're not in trouble, Midoriya," his teacher assured, handing him a box. "I wanted to let you know we had finished checking your SBMSN to the practical and thought you would like to do a final inspection before we gave it to Eraserhead. Just in case." "Oh sure," Izuku chirped, placing his notebook on the desk. Majima eyed the notebook curiously, reading the title on the front as his student opened the box. The boy looked the goggles over, running through the different features and making sure everything was in working properly. "Done. Everything seems to be in working order. I hope he's able to find some use for them." "All right, then I will pass them on to him later," the hero said, as his student placed the support item back in the box. "If I may ask, what is that, Midoriya?" He pointed to the notebook. "Oh, this? It's my quirk analysis notes," Izuku replied. He hesitantly handed it over when the teacher held out his hand, silently asking for permission to read it. In junior high, sometimes he wouldn't get back what had been taken from him. "It's a hobby of mine. I think quirks are fascinating, especially since why no, don't force yourself, kid," Majima interrupted, making the boy sigh in relief. The man knew the way society viewed the quirkless and was sure the teen in front of him had some hardships in his life because of it. "It's all right. You can tell the others in your own time. But please know that UA has a zero-tolerance policy on bullying or quirk discrimination. If you ever have any issues, tell me or another teacher about it and we will handle it." "Understood." The greenit simply nodded and the teacher turned his attention back to the notebook. He flipped through the pages, finding tons of notes on heroes and their quirks. They were very detailed and comprehensive. So, this was the notebook mentioned in the interview notes. The support hero had planned to ask about it at some point with the student anyway. A particular entry caught his eye. "Oh, he'll definitely want to look at this," Majima thought, thinking of a certain teacher who would be very surprised to know he made it in the notebook. "Midoriya, would it be all right if I borrow this? There's another teacher that I think would find it very informative. You can say no though. I won't pressure you." "Oh, sure," Izuku said, uncertain. His track record with people borrowing his things wasn't exactly good. "I don't normally lend it out, ever. So, please take care of it." "Don't worry, Midoriya," the teacher assured him. "I'm only borrowing it. I promise I'll give it back to you tomorrow." "Yes, sensei," the student replied. The hero dismissed him and Izuku returned to his seat, not really sure what to do now since his teacher had his notebook. Fortunately, the lunch bell chimed soon after and the two support friends left to go find their other friend for lunch. After the lunch bell rang, Izuku and Mei gathered their belongings and left 1H for the cafeteria where they met up with Hitoshi. While in line for food, the greenit found himself geeking out over the fact that the cook hero lunch rush was the one in charge of the UA cafeteria. His muttering rant continued until they got to the front, earning flicks to both arms from his two friends to snap him out of it so he could order. Of course, Izuku was embarrassed, face so red he looked like a strawberry. But the culinary hero merely chuckled as he handed the fanboy his meal. After ordered their food, the three friends managed to find an empty table for them to sit and eat. The cafeteria was really filling up and open spots were dwindling. Students started sitting anywhere that was available. "Excuse me, are these seats free?" a male voice asked. The trio looked up to see two students standing next to their table holding trays of food. The boy had red spiky hair and a shark-like smile while the girl had short brown hair and rosy cheeks. They both were smiling to seem friendly. "If you don't mind sitting with strangers, of course. It's just that everywhere else is full." "Yeah, sure, whatever," Hitoshi said, gesturing towards the empty seats. "Thanks," the girl cheered as the two newcomers sat down and began to eat. Izuku immediately recognized the girl as the one who saved him from tripping before the entrance exam. The boy looked familiar to him too, but he couldn't place from where though. Izuku studied the boy with the red spiky hair who had taken the seat next to him. "Let's see if the red hair? Scar over right eye? Maybe. Shark-like smile? Wait a minute. Lost boy?" Izuku questioned. The redhead teen stopped mid-bite and slowly turned towards him. The other boy studied him for a minute before his face beamed with recognition. Midoriya? Kirishima said with his shark smile, holding out a fist to bump. Hey man, nice to see you again. Guess we did get to see each other in UA. Kirishima-kun. Izuku was so happy that he pulled the other into a hug instead. Kirishima was surprised at first but embraced the hug with a smile. The others watched the pair with expressions of confused amusement. It's been a while, hasn't it? Kirishima said, still hugging the other. Dream still going strong? You know it. Izuku chirped, finally releasing the other. Wow, look at your hair. He reached out and carefully touched one of the sharp spikes. Crispy. I almost didn't recognize you. Haha, yeah, Kirishima laughed with a slight blush. After we spoke that day in the park, I got home and started looking through all of my Crimson Riot collection. I found this promotion disc in one of the books. I had never watched it before and it really inspired me. Like you did. So, I thought I needed to adopt a new attitude about being a hero and that having a new look would help me focus it. What do you think? It's great. Very you, Izuku grinned, approving of the change. I'm guessing it's supposed to be like Crimson Riot style? The other boy nodded earnestly, proud that his homage to his idol was recognized. Wait, I remember you, the brunette exclaimed, causing Izuku to turn his attention to her. You're the boy who tripped before the entrance exam. Nice to see you again, Midoriya. Izuku blushed while Hitoshi did nothing to hide his laughter at his friend's embarrassment. Oh, yeah, that was me, the greenet admitted. His face was red under his mop of green hair, making him look like a strawberry. It's Uraraka-san, right? Thanks again for saving me. No worries, Uraraka giggled, waving dismissively. I couldn't let someone trip if I could help out. After all, I am in UA to learn to be a hero. Wait, you got into the hero course? That's so cool. Izuku exclaimed, making the brunette blush. What class are you in? We're both in class 1A, Kirishima interjected, pride clear on his face. We met during the hero practical. Uraraka used her quirk to save me from being crushed by a three-pointer robot partway through the exam. Though I would have been just fine with my hardening quirk, but I appreciated her help nonetheless. Uraraka gave him a smile and said, It's what a hero would do. And you returned the favor in the end. Not in time before the exam ended though, Kirishima commented with a small frown. Even if you didn't get anything from it, you still helped me, Kirishima, Uraraka said, giving him a comforting smile. What did he do? Izuku asked. Near the end of the exam I saw that Uraraka got trapped under some rubble, Kirishima replied. That's also when the zero-pointer came out. I ran to help her so she wouldn't get crushed, but Present Mike called time before I could get to her. Zero-pointer? The greenet asked. It was this super big robot they brought out the last minute or so of the exam, Uraraka explained to the two confused-looking support students. Hitoshi merely grimaced at the memory of the one in his own failed exam. Even though time was up, Kirishima used his quirk to chisel enough away for me to get out. All the other students had run the other way as soon as they saw the zero-pointer, so he was the only one who tried to help me. He didn't get any credit for it because the exam had ended, but I'm still thankful he did. That was very heroic of you, Kirishima-kun. Izuku said, smiling at his friend, causing the redhead to blush. Wow, Izuku, way to replace us so fast, Hitoshi interjected, the smirk on his face showing he was joking. The greenet rolled his eyes at his friend and snarked right back. What can I say? A man does not live on bread alone. It was the purple-haired teen's turn to roll his eyes as Izuku stuck his tongue out at him. Oh, are you all friends? Uraraka asked. Yep. Izuku chirped, popping the pea. Kirishima-kun, Uraraka-san, these are my friends Hatsune and Shinso Hitoshi. Mei gave a wink and Hitoshi nodded his head in greeting. Mei-chan, Hitoshi-kun, this is Kirishima Aijuru and Uraraka Ochako. The hero students greeted in kind and started asking the other two about themselves. Izuku smiled watching the exchange. Wow, I have two more friends. And in 1A no less. They must have done really well in the practical. The best of the best. His thoughts suddenly paused as something occurred to him. I have a question, he said, interrupting their small talk. You're in 1A, right? Do you have a certain explosive blonde in your class? The hero students nodded their heads, confused but curious. If you could, please don't mention my name around him, the greenet requested. The two heroes-to-be exchanged glances before looked back to him in confusion. I've known Katsuki since we were kids. We don't get along too well. Or rather, he hates my guts and I try to ignore him for the most part. I'm not saying he's a bad guy or anything, and if you want to be friends with him then by all means. But when it comes to anything dealing with me, he gets a little prickly. Might be better to keep my name out of it for the time being. Ah, Uraraka responded. She understood. If someone with that temper went off whenever they heard her name, she would try to avoid it too. Is there a particular reason why he hates you? It's because I want to be a hero and he hates that I ignore him when he tells me to give up, Izuku explained, shrugging. He thinks I'm an idiot for pursuing my impossible dream. So unmanly, the redhead said. He disapproved of anyone trying to stifle another's dream. Especially after Izuku helped inspire him to pursue his own. Why does he think it's impossible? Is it the same reason you told me in the park about your school life? That you don't have a flashy quirk? You could say that, Izuku replied, rubbing his head. Nervously. He glanced at Hitoshi, who gave an assuring nod while Mei lightly squeezed his shoulder in support. You see, I don't have a quirk at all. He studied the hero students, searching for any kind of negative reaction. At first the pair were stunned, definitely not expecting that kind of answer. But their expressions became friendly as they smiled warmly at him. He didn't see any disgust or pity, the kinds of reactions that he usually received when people found out. It made him hopeful that UA would be different from his previous schools. Anyway, whenever he hears my name, he tends to blurt out that I'm quirkless, and I'd rather be the one to tell people about that myself. Hey, no worries, man, Kirishima said, holding out a fist bump which the other returned this time. We got your back. Yeah, Mito. You can count on us. Uraraka chimed in. Izuku blushed at the new nickname and smiled as his circle of friends grew by 2 more that day. Once lunch ended, everyone returned to their homerooms for the end-of-day class meetings. Since it was the first day, there were no afternoon classes ending in a half-day, and everyone was free to go once the meetings were done. Mei was still disappointed that the studio wouldn't be available to them until the next day, so she left early to go back to her own lab. The 2 hero hopefuls, on the other hand, stayed behind to begin their training. Perhaps the upper rafters of Gym Gamma wasn't the best place to take a nap, but Shoyuta was on a break and he figured Hisashi wouldn't find him there. He loved his husband, but the man was always so demon loud. Sometimes, the erasure hero needed time alone to sleep. Besides, classes had already finished for the day anyway. However, his nap was interrupted when the doors of the gym opened and he heard 2 voices that did not belong to any student in 1A. They sounded young though, so were most likely first years, which he found curious. Usually, first year didn't use the gyms right at the start of the year. So, I've been thoroughly studying up on the past sports festivals held by UA for the first years. There are always 3 parts, some kind of obstacle course, a team battle, and finishing with the one-on-one matches. And like the hero practical, those with more physical type quirks tend to have an advantage in the festival. Shoyuta had planned to sneak out to find a different napping place, but that last comment made him pause. He had been saying the same thing about the entrance exam for years. Instead of leaving, the black-haired hero silently slipped out of his sleeping bag to investigate who was talking. Now, you know this since you took the hero practical and didn't pass. How they expect students with more passive quirks that require human interaction to work against robots is still a mystery to me. Peeking over the railing, Shoyuta saw 2 students below, one tall with purple hair and one short with green hair, both heads of hair an unruly mess. Not anyone in his class nor in Ken's class 1B. They were definitely from one of the other 3 departments, though he ruled out the business course, so either general studies or support course. As he watched, the green one continued talking as they both started to do some stretches, purple following green's example. Since you didn't pass the hero practical and I didn't even try for obvious reasons, our only chance to transfer to the hero course is through the sports festival. Obvious reasons? What could those be? Oh yeah, I remember you mentioned that before, the purple one said. How do you know about that? Because it's been done before, the green one replied with a shrug. Only a handful of times in the history of UA, but it has happened. The most recent one was some years ago when a first year in general studies won the sports festival. Have you ever heard of the pro hero Eraserhead? What? Shoyuta was surprised. Being an underground hero, he wasn't well known, and that was on purpose. He despised the media and avoided it at all costs, both for personal and professional reasons. Yet, this first year knew about him? And that he had won the sports festival his first year in order to transfer? Consider his curiosity officially piqued. The purple one shook his head in answer, and the green one continued. It's understandable. He is an underground hero, so having people know about him and what he can do would really hinder his work. And yet you know about him, commented the purple one, who then smirked. Though I'm not really surprised with those hero stalker notebooks of yours. The green it squawked. They're not stalker notebooks. I like analyzing quirks. It's really interesting to consider the pros and cons of each unique power and figure out how to improve them or fight against them. Are the side notes of each hero's hobbies, likes and dislikes, favorite food, and such also a part of those pros and cons? The purple one teased. Shut up, the green one said, blushing as the other snickered at his embarrassment. Anyway, his quirk is erasure, which allows him to erase the quirk of the person he's looking at. The only exception being mutant-type quirks. Like yours, his relies on interacting with another person, so he had initially failed the entrance exam same as you. But he won the sports festival and was transferred. Again, the man was surprised. How did this kid know so much about him? What kind of information did he have in those notebooks the purple one mentioned? Therefore, it seems plausible to say that if we do our best to at least get to the third round, and if we place high enough, there's a chance we can transfer into the hero course. No pressure then, retorted the purple one. What do you have in mind? We have a couple of weeks before the sports festival, and we should use the resources of UA to train the best we can, the green one replied. Your quirk is very useful and we should train with it, but it's important to not rely on that alone. A quirk is just a tool you can use. The more tools you have in your arsenal, the more versatile you can be in a fight. For you, I think we should focus on practicing hand-to-hand combat in preparation for situations where you can't use your quirk. We should also build up your stamina as well. The more the green one talked, the more impressed Shoyuta was with what the kid was saying. That a quirk was just a tool, and that if it was the only tool you had, a fight that took away that tool would leave you defenseless. That over-reliance on quirks had helped Shoyuta win countless fights in the dark alleys of Mizudafu. Take away their quirk and the villains and thugs usually start to panic, giving the erasure hero the chance to take them out. This weakness was one that countless of his past and ex-students suffered from. I've been taking self-defense and practicing with weapons for years, the green one continued. I can teach you what I know. Nothing with weapons though, because that would be a support item that doesn't help channel your quirk, so it wouldn't be allowed in the festival. Well, what about you? Asked the purple one. Students in the support course can bring as many support items with them as long as they make the items themselves, the green one replied. I'll be splitting my time after school between training with you and working in the studio. We'll work out a training schedule so you can do things without me there all the time. You've really thought this through, haven't you? The purple one commented, a brow quirked up. I've wanted to be a hero my whole life, the green one confessed, a somewhat sad expression on his face that slowly morphed into a determined one. All throughout my childhood, no one believed I could become one and told me to give up on my dream. Until 10 months ago, when someone finally told me that I could be a hero. This person has very strong ideals, so I know that they meant it. That they truly believe in me, and I'm going to work hard to prove them right. A person with strong ideals, the pro-hero pondered. Was it a hero? He understood how the boy felt about being told he couldn't succeed at being a hero, as he was told that his whole life before UA2. He didn't know what these kids were capable of, but he was glad that the green one hadn't given up just because others told him no. After that, the 2 first years started some basic training. The green one was trying to assess what the purple one's limits were. The students then sat down and both worked in a notebook to plan out their training. Then the green one walked the purple one through some basic kicks and punches, working out the proper stance. The hidden teacher could tell the green one did actually know what he was doing. Still lots of room for improvement, but the foundations were there. Shoyuta stayed up in the rafters to watch the pair train. From what he gathered from their conversation, the purple one had tried for the hero course and didn't pass the practical. The man planned to check the video from the entrance exam to find him and see why his quirk wasn't suited for robots. As for the green one, he hadn't even attempted to take the practical and planned to use support items during the sports festival, which would mean he had to be in the support course. Shoyuta was curious to learn what those obvious reasons were and who these hopeful heroes were. After the two students finished, he planned to head straight for the teacher's room to begin his search. But for now, he watched. Shoyuta found them. And he was slightly miffed about what he found. The purple one was Shinso Hitoshi, who applied for both the hero course and general studies. With a non-physical quirk, the boy somehow knew his chances of passing the hero practical was slim to none, so he obviously had general studies as a backup plan. Smart move. What he was miffed about for Shinso was that his quirk, brainwashing, would be great in hero work. Not so much for situations like what All Might or Endeavor deal with, but it would be perfect for underground hero work. However, with the exam the way it is, this kid fell through the cracks like so many others. Like Shoyuta had when he started school at UA. Something had to be done about that test. The green one was still a bit of a mystery. Shoyuta did find out his name was Midoriya Izuku and he had applied to the support course only, but since the man wasn't a part of that department, he couldn't access any information on his quirk. The only reason he could view Shinsu's was because he had applied to the hero course initially. DMN bureaucratic red tape. He had the Greenit's profile up on his computer, but it only gave very basic information such as his name, age, grade, and what course he was in. Guess he'll have to try harder to learn about the support student and find out what those obvious reasons were some other way. As he let out a sigh and looked away from his screen, Maijima entered the staff room and walked up to him. Aizawa, the support teacher called out, getting his attention. Your class is scheduled for combat training tomorrow, right? The tired man merely gave a grunt in response, letting the man know to continue. There's a student in my class that I'd like to join yours for training tomorrow and 1B for the day after, Maijima continued. He has impressive analytical skills that would be beneficial to your students, both for their quirks and for any support items they may need. Maijima reached into his bag and handed him a notebook that looked like it had seen better days. It was burnt and the pages were warped as if they had been soaked in water. Shoyuta looked at it questionably before cautiously taking it. He read the title on the cover aloud. Hero Analysis for the Future, he muttered. Number 13? What is this? Just read it, the other teacher prompted, sitting in a seat next to the tired man. Shoyuta quirked up an eyebrow at the redhead before turning back to the notebook and carefully opening the damaged cover to a random page. The two-page spread he opened to showed a sketch of Kamui Woods, an up-and-coming new hero, and some scribbled annotations around the drawing as well as another page covered in more scrawled notes. What he expected was some simple notes about what the quirk was and maybe a simple description of the hero like you would find on a trading card. You know, superficial stuff. But what he read was beyond impressive. Written in the notebook was a full-blown in-depth analysis that picked the Wood hero's quirk apart. There were descriptions of the quirk's strengths, weaknesses, possible improvements, and new moves to try, but also detailed plans of how the hero could be defeated. The more Shoyuta read, the more his brow furrowed in concentration but also concern. If a villain were to find these notes, they could use the information to defeat the hero with no problem at all. He realized that these notes were dangerous to leave lying around. Maijima, where did you get this? Shoyuta asked without looking up from the notebook and flipped through it. A particular page caught his eye as he found a drawing of himself with an accompanying full page of scribbled notes. Hell, I'm even in here. Seriously, where did you get this? The student I was talking about joining your class tomorrow. He's one of my first years, Midoriya Izuku, Maijima replied. They both glanced at said student's profile still up on the computer screen briefly. I see you've noticed him already. Anyway, he says it's a hobby of his to analyze quirks. I saw him with it during class and asked him about it. I also saw the pages on you and thought you'd like to read it. These notes are impressive for a hobby, Shoyuta said, as he read through the notes on himself. Wait, did the kid just call my goggles stupid? But then he read through the suggested improvements to the support item and agreed that the ones he had were indeed stupid. He subconsciously reached for the goggles hidden in the scarf capture weapon around his neck as he read. Oh yeah, Midoriya made something for you, Maijima said, causing Shoyuta to look up. Maijima pulled a box out of his bag and handed it to Shoyuta. He placed the notebook on his desk, still open to his page, as he took the box and opened it. Inside, he found a new pair of goggles, in the same obnoxious yellow that Hisashi loved so much, and instructions on the new features added, all the ones listed in the notes. This was his SBMSN for the support practical. Said that once we were done checking it that we could give it to you. We thoroughly checked it and it's in great working order. Shoyuta carefully took the new goggles out of the box. The design was more streamlined, slimmer, and less bulky than his old ones. Lighter too. Shoyuta put them on and looked around. The front was no longer slotted and instead was one solid piece. Similar to ski goggles. The material was dark on the outside, like how sunglasses look, so no one could see where he was looking, but he could see just fine as if he wasn't wearing them at all. The fit was perfect around his head and the reduced weight would do wonders for his neck. He looked down at the instructions and decided to explore the new features later and took them off, placing them back in the box as Maijima continued. One of his goals is to help heroes with their support items and improve them as their skills do. The fact that he knew about you in general is a feat, but when he showed an understanding of your goggles and then presented an improved version, it's what ultimately got him into UA in addition to his high score on the written test. There's a big brain in that head of his. I saw that he only applied to the support course, Shoyuta said as he adjusted his old goggles hanging around his neck. He would need to test the new ones before wearing them for actually hero work. Did he mention any other aspirations? Not to me. But during the interview he said he would transfer to the hero course if he could, Maijima replied. Plus, the title of his notebook makes it pretty obvious. Shoyuta picked the notebook back up and looked at the notes on him again. They really were impressive. He wants to be a hero, Shoyuta said, standing up and walking towards the copy machine. I saw him today in Gym Gamma. He was with another student named Shinso Hitoshi, General Studies. Oh, what were they doing? Maijima asked. They were training for the sports festival, Shoyuta said as he pushed some buttons and copied the pages on himself. He walked back to his desk, copy in hand, and sat down, handing the notebook back to the other teacher. They were talking about their plans to use the festival to prove themselves and aim to get as far in the competition as possible. They hope to transfer into the hero course, like I did. Well, I don't know about this Shinso, but Midoriya has a lot of work ahead of him if he plans to try that, Maijima said, putting the notebook back in his bag to give back to Midoriya the next day. Why is that? Shoyuta asked. Would this solve the mystery of the obvious reasons? He's quirkless. That was all he could say. Obvious reasons indeed. Shoyuta sat there for a moment, letting the information set in, before turning back to his computer. The picture of Midoriya with a nervous smile looked back at him. A quirkless boy with dreams of being a hero. That must have led the boy to have an interesting childhood. He thought back to his own, with everyone saying that he could never be a hero with a weak quirk. Some even going as far as to call him a villain. Even when he had transferred to the hero course, some still judged him because of his quirk. At times he may have doubted himself, but with the annoyingly persistent encouragement of his friends, he kept pushing forward to be his own kind of hero. Ultimately, he had refused to let others' words stop him, and it seems this kid hasn't either. It was hard to admit, but Maijima was right. Midoriya had a lot of work ahead of him if his goal was to become a hero. A quirkless hero. It would be a groundbreaking achievement, one for the history books for sure. If the kid could pull it off, he would be a beacon to those who were in similar situations. Those who didn't have the right quirk for heroism. The ones with weak or useless quirks, or in his case, no quirk at all. You said helping heroes improve their support items was one of his goals, Shoyuta commented, looking back to the redhead. He has more than one? Yes, this also was why he was accepted, Maijima said. His other goal is to create what he calls quirk replicating support items. To use his own example, for instance creating a mask or mouthpiece to replicate a fire-breathing quirk. It's an intriguing idea, and I'm wondering if that's how he plans to do well in the sports festival. By creating support items for himself to compensate for not having a quirk. Intriguing indeed, the erasure hero thought as he glanced at his computer again to the student's picture. It was risky and bold if that was the quirkless boy's plan. Shoyuta found himself wanting to help the kid do it. Oh, what the hell? I'll do it. I will help this kid. His friend too. He knew that he had needed a role model like this when he was growing up. The kid had potential in spades, and the erasure hero wanted to see how far he could go. Shoyuta turned back to the other teacher. He can join the class for the training tomorrow. Let All Might know. He'll be teaching that class. With that, Maijima gave a nod and then left the teacher's room to find Ken to ask about letting Midoriya join them as well. Shoyuta turned back to the copy of the kid's notes on him. They were good. More than good. Almost on a professional level. It just needed a little fine-tuning to help the rambling to be more concise. And he knows just the mammal to help with that. That's all for now, Maijima said, ending the morning meeting the next day. There were a few minutes before homeroom ended, so the students were talking amongst themselves. The teacher caught Izuku's eye and beckoned him to the front. The boy approached him and the redhead handed back the student's notebook. Returned as promised. Those notes are quite impressive. How long have you been pursuing this hobby? Thanks, Maijima-sensei, Izuku said, a bit surprised he did get his notebook back. Maybe I really will be different, he thought with a smile. I've basically been working on them since I could write. Though the first few were very simple to start. But I have gone back and added to them over the years as I observed new things. Analysis is a very useful skill to have, the teacher commented. I'd like to help you work on improving it to help with your work here. Since you mentioned in your interview that one of your goals here is to make quirk replicating support items, being able to analyze how quirks work will help with that. The greenet beamed. Yes, please. That would be very helpful, sensei. I had already planned on analyzing the class's quirks and anyone else I notice here. Did you have anything specific in mind? He's quite the go-getter, Maijima thought, chuckling at the student's enthusiasm. Very eager about pursuing knowledge. Nothing long-term as of yet. But the hero course first years will be holding combat training in the afternoon today and tomorrow. I'd like you to attend and analyze their quirks from the observation room. Both homeroom teachers for 1A and 1B have already approved your attendance. Would you like to do that? Yes. Izuku blurted out. He couldn't help it. He was too excited. Oh my god, that would be amazing. I'll be able to see their quirks in action. It'll be interesting to see who is teamed up with who. And to see which quirks work well together and those that don't. Not to mention... Midoriya, Maijima called out, breaking the boy out of his rambling. The student blushed while the teacher merely chuckled. I get that you're excited, but save it for the training, all right? After lunch, meet up with Class 1A in front of Ground Beta. You will do the same for 1B tomorrow. Make sure you have your notebook and anything else you need. Oh, and Midoriya? Yes, sensei? All Might will be teaching the class. Try not to fanboy too much, the hero teased. Izuku awkwardly chuckled as he scratched his head. I'll try, he replied, turning to go back to his seat. He still wasn't sure how to feel about All Might after their first meeting. It had been almost a year since then, and he wondered if the man would even remember him. People tended to describe him as being kind of plain-looking. It's going to be so awkward. The excitement of getting to study the quirks of the hero course was slightly dulled by the fact that he would have to meet with All Might again. And it showed on his face. May noticed his mood as he sat down at his desk. Izuku, are you all right? The pinkette asked, turning to her friend with concern. What? Oh yeah, I'm fine, Izuku said, shaking himself to stop being lost in thought. Actually, I have something to tell you. Maijima-sensei wants me to go observe the hero course in their combat training after lunch today and tomorrow. During our first UA studio time? May blurted out exasperated, flailing her arms. What about starting to work on making our babies? The two received some odd looks at the statement. Izuku blushed and reprimanded, Machen, how many times do I have to tell you that context is important? She calls her inventions babies. The last part he called out to the class in explanation. The other students shrugged, already writing off the pair as weird, and went with it. Turning back to his friend, Izuku said, I know we were looking forward to spending the first studio time together, but we'll have 3 years of opportunities. But this, observing the hero course, I could get more information on their quirks to help with our quirk replication project. I don't know if they will ever ask me to do this again. I can't pass that up. Please. His green eyes pleaded for her to understand. Mei stared at him as she thought it over. Finally, she sighed and her body relaxed in acceptance. All right, you have a point about the benefits. I'll make sure to find the best spots in the studio and save you a seat. Thanks, Mei-chan, Izuku said, smiling at his friend. I'll be starting with 1A right after lunch. Oh crap. Katsuki is in 1A. I can't let him see me until the sports festival. He'll ruin my plans before I can even set them into motion. What am I gonna do? The greenet started to freak out. He couldn't let his quirk status be revealed so soon. Izuku was broken out of his panic as a black beanie was forced onto his head. He looked up to find Mei shoving a pair of goggles at him. Here, she said as he took them. I figured we may run into Explodey Boy in the halls or something eventually. So, I prepared some things as a makeshift disguise. It's not much, and these are one of my beta goggles to the ones I'm wearing. But it should do for now to hide from him. Tears welled up in his eyes at his friend's thoughtfulness and couldn't help but pull her into a hug. Machen, you are the best. The rest of the morning passed by quickly since most of the classes were basically introductions and going through the syllabus for each subject. Mei had to constantly flick the fanboy's arm whenever another hero entered as their teacher. Present Mike, or Yamada Hizashi, shared his excitement when the voice hero learned of Izuku's proficiency in English since he talked with his dad, who worked in the US, once a week. Midoriya Hisashi had insisted on teaching his son English starting from a young age since it was an important skill in the business world. Once the lunch bell rang, the two support students met up with their general studies friend and headed for the cafeteria. They managed to quickly get in line for their food and found an empty table. As they started to eat, their hero course friends approached the table. Hi, Mito, Uraraka called out, food tray in hand with Kirishima not far behind. Mind if we join you again? Oh hey guys. By all means, the greenet replied, trying to organize his papers on the table to make room. He was checking through his school things to make sure he had everything for the combat training. Wow, Mito, the brunette commented as she sat down. That's a lot of notes. Did you get homework already or something? Kirishima asked. It's only the second day, man. What? Oh no, these are my personal notes for my hobby, Izuku said, still gathering his things. I like to analyze quirks. He's going to be joining you guys for your next class, Mei explained. He's checking to see if he has everything so he can take notes on your quirks. Then we can make so many cute babies. Bee babies. Kirishima sputtered, cheeks as red as his hair. Context, Mei-chan. The greenet face-bombed at her lack of tact. She means her inventions. He's going to observe you and then use what he learns to make the best babies to help you guys. Isn't that right, Hiro-kun? The pinkette continued with no shame at all. Hiro-kun? Uraraka inquired, tilting her head. I thought your first name was Izuku, Kirishima commented, slightly confused. Oh no, it is, Izuku explained, giving a shy smile. That's just Mei-chan's nickname for me. You know, the brunette said, a finger on her chin. I kind of like it. It's like you're a hero without being in the hero course. Yet? Izuku muttered to himself quietly before addressing Uraraka again. Well, if you like it and if Mei-chan doesn't mind, he paused to look at the pinkette who gave a nod. Then you can call me that. Probably a good thing too. Oh, why is that? Uraraka tilted her head in confusion. Kirishima simply raised a questioning eyebrow as he was between bites. You know how I asked you to not mention my name around a certain explosive blonde? The brunette and redhead nodded at him. Well, maybe this can be like a code name. Oh, like secret spy stuff, Uraraka giggled. Well, then Hiro-kun it is. Just in time too, since you'll be in the same room as him next PRD, Mei pointed out. It's going to be like you're on a secret mission, Kirishima added with a sharp toothy grin. Incognito. So manly. They continued to talk and eat after that. As lunch ended, the group took a moment to exchange phone numbers. Izuku also showed the two hero students the beanie and goggles he would be wearing. He asked them to address him by the code name during the exercise so as not to set the explosive teen off. Even with the short amount of time the 1A students had spent with the blonde, they understood why Izuku wanted to remain anonymous to the other boy. When the bell rang, they cleaned up their trays and left the cafeteria as a group. The greenet briefly parted from the hero students to go prepare for the coming training. He had a disguise to put on after all. Before heading to ground beta, Mei helped Izuku put on his makeshift disguise. She made sure all his curly green hair was tucked into the beanie, the goggles were securely in place, and even rubbed some soot over his freckles for good measure. When asked where it came from, she simply said that any good inventor always had some soot on them. With one last check of his bag and a goodbye to his friend, Izuku headed off to ground beta. It took him a little while to find it, but he managed to get there before any of the students arrived. Not even All Might was there yet. Must be giving some kind of explanation back in the classroom still. Not wanting to wait out in the sun, he decided to step inside the observation room in the meantime. There was a huge screen on one wall with different windows open showing various camera angles inside and outside of a building. There was a panel of buttons and switches with some chairs next to it. Izuku sat down in one that had a small table-like surface attached to it. He took out his notebook and a pencil and eraser from his pen case, which he placed on the table, before putting the recognizable All Might-themed case back in his bag. He then hung his bag and jacket on the back of the chair. Once done, he turned his attention to the tech setup in front of him. As he scanned over the panel in front of him, the door opened and someone entered the room. Izuku turned around to see that All Might had entered, decked out in his Silver Age costume, who then deflated like he had on the rooftop almost a year ago. Great observational skills there, All Might. Did he even check to see if anyone else was in the room? The boy made a noise to alert the hero to his presence. The man froze and slowly turned around to look at him, his costume pooling around his skeletal form. He paled and started to sputter in panic. Izuku quickly ran up to him, hands gesturing frantically, attempting to calm the hero. All Might. It's okay. I already know. This isn't the first time you've deflated in front of me. The sputtering came to a screeching halt at that. The number one hero began to search his face for anything familiar. Izuku pulled off his goggles and beanie to show his green eyes and green hair in all its messy glory. Recognition slowly dawned in the man's deep-set blue eyes. It's you. The boy I met a year ago. Young? Midoriya Izuku, he offered with a small smile, a bit happy the hero did actually remember him. Yeah, hey All Might. Long time no see. All Might let out a huge sigh of relief, placing a hand over his still rapidly beating heart. Clearly relieved that he hadn't revealed this form to a random student, he addressed the boy. Young Midoriya, you gave me quite a shock. What are you doing in here? Did they not tell you? The support student asked, fiddling with the beanie and goggles nervously. My Jima-sensei said that he wanted me to observe the combat training so I can take notes on the students' quirks. I was told it was okayed by the homeroom teachers for 1A and 1B. Notes? Ah yes, that notebook of yours, the teacher said, hand on his sharp chin as he remembered. I happened to glance through it when I was signing it the day we met. Your notes were interesting. Being able to analyze is a useful skill. I'm guessing he wanted you here to practice that? Now that I think about it, I do recall him mentioning another student coming to observe. The greenet nodded in confirmation and said, Why yeah, I'm really excited to start. This wasn't as awkward as I thought it would be. Well then, I look forward to working with you, All Might said as they exchanged bows. From the other side of the door, the pair could hear the sounds of approaching students. The two scrambled to collect themselves before the others tried to enter the room. All Might puffed up into his muscle form while Izuku quickly shoved the beanie on his head, tucking in any stray hairs, and fixed the goggles over his eyes. The man gave him a questioning look and he merely shrugged. You have your ways to stay anonymous, I have mine. If you could please call me Hero? There's a certain student I don't want knowing I'm here. I don't want our issues to disturb the other students. All Might raised an eyebrow in question but simply nodded to say he would. Thanks, Izuku said with a sigh, relieved the hero would help him with his secret. Also, please let me handle talking about my quirk status. As a personal favor. The support student received another nod in answer and they both walked outside to greet Class 1A. As the hero course students approached, Izuku's eyes sparkled as he took in everyone's hero costumes. Not that anyone could see that with the goggles over his eyes. There were so many different colors and designs. One was even outfitted to look like a knight. Though, he could already see some features on various costumes that could possibly use a fix. His hand was itching to begin writing. He scanned the crowd and easily found his friends, who waved in greeting. Uraraka's costume reminded him of an astronaut. He thought her wrist guards didn't have to be so big though, and wanted to know what use the heels on her boots served. Kirishima's costume was clearly a homage to Crimson Riot to go along with his hair, though he wondered what purpose the gears on his shoulders served. All these questions and more were mentally noted to be written down and looked into later. Izuku made a point to not look in Katsuki's direction for longer than a passing glance. Though he couldn't help but think, are those gauntlets even comfortable? Thankfully, the blonde didn't seem to even register he was there or anyone really, seeming to ignore even his own classmates. Though he doesn't seem to have that same pompous look he had back in Aldra, Izuku thought, sparing another quick peek at the blonde. Katsuki stood with his usual scowl and self-assured stance, but the greenet could see he looked the slightest bit humbler from before. Yue is the best of the best. Perhaps here he'll finally learn that his quirk isn't the be-all and all and that there are others that can beat him. Greetings, students. All Might beamed at 1A with his signature smile. Now that you all look the part, let us start our first hero basic training. Joining us today is a special guest. Please introduce yourself. What? Izuku blanched at having to do so in front of all the other students all of a sudden. Even though he knew two of them already, other than Katsuki, it didn't help his nerves much. Taking a deep breath to settle himself, Izuku stepped forward, not missing how much smaller he looked standing next to the towering figure of the symbol of peace. Hello. I'm from the support course in Class 1H, Izuku greeted. The class trying to keep his nerves in check. At the sound of his voice, Izuku saw Katsuki's shoulders stiffen in recognition. The greenet forced himself to calm down and put faith in his makeshift disguise. He could feel those burning red eyes on him as the blonde studied him for any signs of who he was under the hat, goggles, and soot. But, thankfully after a few tense scrutinizing moments, hidden green eyes watched Katsuki seem to come to a conclusion with a shake of his head and dismissive huff. Internally, Izuku let out a sigh of relief. I'm here to watch your training and take notes on your quirks, the disguised greenet continued, still nervous but pressed on. Please call me Hero. Nice to meet you. He bowed as he finished as the class greeted him as a group. Now that introductions are over, All Might said, taking back the class's attention. Izuku had to restrain himself from facepalming when the man took out a cheat sheet. I will explain in more detail on how this battle training will be done. Today we will be. As the hero described what they would be doing, Izuku walked over to Uraraka to say hello. Izuku looked around and noticed something odd. After the initial awe of seeing the costumes, he counted the students and only came up with 18 when usually 1A had 20 students. Uraraka-san, the support student whispered, not wanting to disturb the teacher's explanation. Why are there only 18 students? Oh that. Well, she replied quietly, rubbing her head nervously. While everyone else went to the entrance ceremony, our homeroom teacher, Aizawa-sensei, had us do a quirk apprehension test. Someone said it would be fun, which made him decide to expel the student whose overall score came in last place. Yayorozu, the girl with the ponytail, and some others thought it was just a ruse, but he really did it. The one who did place last tried to argue it wasn't fair, but Aizawa-sensei said they didn't take the test seriously and we couldn't expect to coast through his class. Harsh, Izuku commented, frowning slightly. What about the other one? It was this short boy with purple ball on his head, Uraraka continued. I think he came in second to last place? Anyway, he was expelled after he was caught peeking into the girls' locker room through a hole in the wall of the boys' locker room. He looked at his friend in concern. That was such a creepy thing to do. Are you all right, Uraraka-san? I'm fine, Hiro-kun, she assured him, smiling warmly and patting his shoulder lightly. He was stopped pretty quickly, so it's okay now. Thanks for your concern. They turned their attention back to the teacher. The student dressed like a knight addressed the hero and asked, Sensei, if we are having 2-on-2 battles, how will that work with only 18 students? Wouldn't that make an odd number of 9 groups? You are correct, young Ida, All Might replied. Since your number has been reduced to 18, the last group will face 2 students from any of the losing teams. Think of it as a redemption round. Now that everyone knows what we're doing, it's time to draw lots to decide your teams. Is that really the best to decide that? Ida questioned incredulously. If you think about it, Izuku piped up, suddenly making everyone look to him. The soot hid his blush for the most part. Pros often find themselves in situations where they have to team up with heroes from other agencies. It's good to learn to adapt to working with new people. I see. A way to practice for the future, Ida said. Thank you for your insight. I apologize for the interruption. Now that that's cleared up, All Might interjected, pulling out a box with a hole in the top. Let's figure out our teams. Step up and take a number. Nizu was working at his desk, going through the usual start-of-year paperwork. It was tedious, busy work in his opinion, but necessary for him to finish as he was the principal of UA. He took pride in his work, no matter how mundane, as he ran one of the most successful hero schools in Japan. Knock knock. Come in, the principal called out. The door to his office opened and Aizawa stepped into the room. Aizawa-san, to what do I owe the pleasure? I want to talk to you about a student, the man explained, taking a seat in front of the desk. He placed a box and a sheet of paper in his lap. Found another student to expel already? The mammal teased as he took out a tea set. The tired man gave Nizu an unimpressed look at his joke. Or is this another matter? The student in question is not in my class, Aizawa replied, politely refusing the principal's offer of tea. I want to talk about Midoriya Izuku in the support course. The mammal typed into his computer and quickly pulled up the student profile. Midoriya, yes. First-year support course student in Class 1H, good GPA in middle school. His test score on the written exam was in the higher percentile, and his SBMSN for the practical was well received by the judges. It was goggles that were made for you, correct? Yes, Aizawa replied. He stood briefly to hand the box to the principal. Nizu opened it and inspected the goggles inside. He scanned the paper listing the upgrades and examined some of the new features. I've been using the same design for my goggles for years. They've worked well enough for me and I never felt the need to change them. Then this kid comes along and calls my current one stupid. Did he now? Nizu commented, an amused look on his face as he took a sip of tea. Not to my face, the man replied, handing over the sheet of paper. My Jima came to me with the goggles and one of the kids' notebooks. This was one of the entries inside. Nizu put down his cup and scanned over the paper, taking in every bit of information. The amount was quite a lot, remarkably so since Aizawa was an underground hero with close to no media coverage. He would have thought the student had an analysis quirk, but a quick glance at his computer confirmed the boy was quirkless. Which means all this information came naturally from his mind. You said this was one of the entries in the notebook? The principal inquired, still reading through the notes. He chuckled as he found the comment about the goggles. It was part of a collection, Aizawa explained. He leaned forward, placing his elbows on his knees, touching his fingers together in front of his face. The title on the cover was Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. That tore Nizu's eyes away from the notes, a carnal excitement gleaming in his eyes. One by one, the students of 1A took a slip of paper from the box and began to form their pairs. Izuku observed the students as they sorted themselves out. He didn't really know anything about their quirks besides what any unique physical traits could imply. such as the boy with a tail or the girl who had features resembling a frog. He couldn't wait for the training to get started so he could see their quirks in action. As everyone finally settled, the teams were confirmed. 1A Battle Training Teams. Team A, Yaoyorozu Momo and Uraraka Ochako. Team B, Todoroki Shuto and Shuji Mizo. Team C, Kirishima Idru and Shiro Hanta. Team D, Bakugu Katsuki and Ida Tenya. Team E, Aoyama Yuga and Ishido Mina. Team F, Sada Rikido and Kuda Kuji. Team G, Kaminari Denki and Jarkyuka. Team H, Tokoyami Fumikage and Azui Tsu. Team I, Ojiro Mashireo and Hagakure Toru. With the teams determined, All Might pulled out 2 more boxes to determine which pairs would be playing one of 2 roles in each battle. Either as the heroes with the goal to capture the villains or retrieve the bomb, or as the villains with the goal to capture the heroes or protect the bomb until time ran out. All Might pulled out 1 ball from each box to reveal the first match. The heroes are Team A, Boom the Man, and the villains are Team D. Yaoyorozu, Uraraka, please go to the adjacent room to prepare your strategy. Bakugu, Ida, you have 5 minutes to hide the bomb and plan your defense. Both teams will be provided with schematics of the building, capture tape, and communication devices. Your 5 minutes start now. Uraraka and Yaoyorozu, the girl with the ponytail his friend mentioned earlier, went to another room to prepare, while Katsuki and the student that looked like a knight, who had to be Ida, headed into the building. As they waited, the students and their teacher entered the observation room. All Might and Izuku took their seats in front of the panel of buttons while the students stood around them. All Might handed Izuku an earpiece as he fixed his own. The support student had to untuck his ear to put it in place. It would allow him to listen in on the battle through the cameras placed throughout the building. Izuku took out his notebook and opened to an empty page to prepare for his notes. He did plan to give each student their own 2-page spread, like all his other entries, but for now he divided the page into 4 sections, 1 for each student. While he was doing so, Kirishima came to stand by him and was able to answer Izuku's questions about what the other students' names were so he could recognize who was who as they were called to battle. Once 5 minutes had passed, the villains took their places and the heroes began their plan of attack. The other students watched the action play out on the screen of the observation room, the different windows showing the camera feeds that allowed them to watch both teams simultaneously. The support student had his pencil ready as All Might announced, "Ready? Begin!" Yaoyorozu and Uraraka versus Bakugu and Ida. Of the 4 students he was observing, the only one Izuku really knew was Katsuki since they grew up together. He knew the blonde's quirk, personality, and his natural tendency to start with a right hook. Not to mention his ego. One that was so large that Izuku was sure the explosive teen would insist on going after the hero team on his own. But to his surprise, Katsuki stayed to defend the bomb on the 3rd floor while Ida performed quick patrols in the hallways. Maybe he actually listened to something Ida said, Izuku thought. I'm sure if I was the one going against Katsuki, he would have gone after me with no regard to his partner or the mission. The Greenet made a note of that surprising tidbit, adding a question if it was a one-time thing or not. He also noted what he saw of the other students' quirks. For Ida, his quick patrols and the fact that he had what looked like engines coming from the back of his calves led his to guess he had an engine quirk that boosted his speed. Perhaps he's related to Ingenium who also has engines but in his elbows? For Uraraka, he had some suspicions since she saved him from tripping. Something to do with gravity. Possibly activated by touch and turned off by putting her fingers together like she had before? That could be the reason for those pink pads on her fingers that sort of resembled a cat's paw. But instead of using it, the 2 girls used the fire escape on the side of the building to sneak into a 2nd floor window. He would have to keep an eye out as to why. As for Yaoyorozu, she was a mystery at first, though he did initially guess it was something that involved her skin since her costume was so revealing. Or at least he hoped so, and it wasn't just a horrible design choice by the costume's designer. He watched her appear to actually make things from her own body, a shield and staff for herself and some kind of small round weapons for Uraraka. A creation quirk of some kind? Is there a limit to what she can make? What kind of matter is used to make what she creates? Her own lipids maybe? Once Ida noticed the hero team had reached the third floor, he sprinted back to the room the bomb was in. Good, he decided on teamwork rather than facing them on his own. Yaoyorozu and Uraraka gave a good fight once the teams finally clashed. The creation girl managing to trip Ida with her staff at one point, and Uraraka surprised Katsuki, as well as the rest of the class, when she threw the small weapons which turned out to be grenades. But they were no match for the explosive teen's quirk. Not even with Uraraka's attempts to float over the fight confirming Izuku's theories, and he noted how the attempts left her looking queasy. With well-practiced blasts and a fiery personality to match, in the end the victory went to the villains as the time ran out. The teams returned to the observation room and they discussed the battle. Izuku finished up his notes for the match as the next teams were selected and the 5-minute preparation PRD began again. Next up, the heroes are Team B. All Might announced. The villains are Team I. 5 minutes start now. It wasn't long that the 5 minutes were up. More than enough time for Izuku to prepare another page in his notebook for the coming battle. Uraraka joined Kirishima in standing next to the Greenet, chatting casually with her friends. All Might started the match and the other students were eager for another long fight. Todoroki and Shuji versus Ojiro and Hagakure. The match was over in a matter of seconds. The boy with the tail, Ojiro, and the invisible girl, Hagakure, didn't stand a chance. Izuku watched the boy half encased in ice, Todoroki, tell his partner with multiple arms, Shuji, to wait outside before going in alone. In an instant, the entire building was covered in ice, freezing the villain team where they stood. As Todoroki walked into the room with the bomb, the villains could do nothing but watch as he approached the bomb. Otherwise, they would have ripped off their own skin trying to break away from the ice since both of them were barefoot. I seriously hope Hagakure-san actually has a costume on made of some kind of special material and isn't completely naked. That would be stupid and really unsafe to leave her exposed like that. As the ice user touched the bomb, steam started to fill the room as the ice melted away. Izuku wrote a question he wanted to ask the boy once he got back to the room. The others he didn't have much to write about other than his question about Hagakure's costume since the match was over so fast. The students returned and the discussion was short. Due to Todoroki only melting the ice to free his classmates, the next match would take place in a different building. The next teams were chosen as the heroes being Team H and the villains being Team C. Once the prep time began, Izuku approached the boy covered in ice. "Excuse me, could I have a word with you in private?" Izuku asked the taller teen. The other kept a neutral expression, studying him, before giving a brief nod and heading back out the door. They walked down the hall away from prying ears and came to a stop a good distance away from the other students. The bicolored boy leaned against one side of the hallway while Izuku leaned against the other. Todoroki was still sporting ice on his left side except for his head. The support student could finally see he had 2 different hair colors split down the middle, white on the right and red on the left. He also had a scar covering the top portion of the left side of his face. Quirk accident, possibly? Before I bring up what I wanted to talk about, Izuku began. I have to ask, is that comfortable? He gestured towards the ice. Todoroki shrugged. I run warmer on my left side so it doesn't bother me. His casual response confirmed the support student's theory that there were 2 sides of the other boy's quirk. Ice and maybe fire? Izuku's mind raced, thinking through all the fire quirks he knew as well as any connection to the name Todoroki. He was sure he knew that family name from somewhere. Wasn't there something else you wanted to ask? The taller boy asked, when the support student got lost in thought for a bit too long. If not, I'd rather go and observe the other battles. Izuku forced himself out of his head and looked into the other boy's eyes. One eye gray, under white hair, and the other blue, under red hair and surrounding by rough red scarred skin. The blue one's color seemed familiar. Are you related to Endeavor? The support student blurted out suddenly. Apparently a very wrong move because the other boy glared at him. I'm sorry. Did I say something wrong? Is that all you wanted to ask? Todoroki spat. If so, we are done here. No, it isn't. Izuku replied quickly. He opened up his notebook to the section on Todoroki. I had a question about your quirk. I wanted to ask why you focused on your ice. How is that any of your business? the taller boy hissed. Okay, there was definitely a history with this. He really hoped the scar didn't play a part in that history. It is my business when it affects your well-being, the greenette shot back. My job here is to analyze your quirks. Which means I look for any side effects that could be harmful to you or others. You froze an entire building. While the others were distracted by the magnitude of your attack, I noticed the beginnings of frost buildup on your right side. He noticed that small of a detail after less than a minute of seeing my quirk? Todoroki thought. There had been some frost buildup, but a quick use of his left side after the battle ended fixed it easily. What else could the other boy notice? If this pattern continued, what else would the other boy figure out as time passed? Frostbite is no joke. Though I guess you would know that growing up with an ice quirk, Izuku continued. However, and I'm only guessing here, I believe your body has a natural way to counterbalance that. How so? The bicolor teen inquired hesitantly. A lot of quirks have some kind of physical trait that represents an aspect of the quirk, the support student explained. From the way your hair and eye colors are different on either side of your body, I can guess that there is a different side of your quirk directed through either the right or the left. Since you used ice on your right, said that your left side tends to runs warmer, and managed to free the other team from your ice, I would theorize your left possibly could channel fire since your father also emits fire. Todoroki was shocked at the detailed breakdown of his quirk that came from a brief observation and a few questions. Did this boy have some kind of analysis quirk? If I'm right and you do have the ability to use ice and fire, then to keep equilibrium within your body, you would need to use both sides equally, Izuku continued, writing down his thoughts as he spoke. Then he stopped, looking up at the other. However, you only used your ice. Why is that? I don't see how any of this is your business, the bicolor teen retorted. If you don't use both sides of your quirk, the result could affect your abilities, the shorter boy countered. You could be incapacitated in a fight if you overuse one side of your quirk, then someone would have to save you. Or someone could die in a situation that calls for you to use all of your quirk, not just your ice. Todoroki scoffed, turning away from the other dismissively. I refuse to use it. Todoroki-kun, if this continues, you could get seriously hurt. The greenette's voice was filled with concern. Why does it even matter to you? Todoroki snapped, causing the shorter teen to flinch. Because if I had your power, I would use it, all of it, to help others, Izuku said, turning away slightly. His fists were balled up in frustration as tears started to well in his eyes. Not that the other could see that. After all, you have twice the natural power than I could ever have. Yet you squander it for reasons I don't know. I would have given anything to have even half your power. You see. He turning back to the other boy, shifting the goggles to sit high on his forehead. Glistening green eyes connected with heterochromatic ones as Izuku looked at him with a sad smile on his face. I'm quirkless. Todoroki just stood there, stunned. Please don't tell anyone else that, because I'd rather tell them on my own, the greenette requested, adjusting the goggles back over his eyes. But think about what I said. In the meantime, if you still insist on using only your ice, at least let me make a support item to help with the side effects. I don't want you to get hurt. With that, the shorter boy went back into the observation room, leaving Todoroki alone with his thoughts. The talk with Todoroki raised more questions for the support student than it answered. What exactly could he do with his left side? Why was he so adamant about not using his full power? Did the scar on the left side of his face have something to do with it? Questions, questions, questions. Izuku hoped they would be answered with time. The greenette entered the observation room and returned to his seat next to all. The hero shot a concerned and questioning side glance at the boy but said nothing. Izuku was preparing a new page for the next round when Todoroki opened the door and joined the other students. Uraraka, who had wandered off to talk to her friends while he was out, made her way back over to him. Hey, Hiro-kun. What did you talk to Todoroki about? She asked curiously. Oh, just something about his quirk. Nothing to worry about, Izuku replied vaguely, smiling. He knew she was just being friendly, but he felt that whatever the reason was that made the ice user refuse to use his full quirk was a private one. It wasn't his place to discuss it with other people. Heroes, villains, your 5 minutes are up, All Might boomed. Ready? Begin. Tokoyami and Azui versus Kirishima and Shiro. The boy with the bird head, Tokoyami, and the frog girl, Azui, cautiously entered the building. From Tokoyami's stomach came a dark entity that must be the bird boy's quirk, which Uraraka informed Izuku was called Dark Shadow. The pair, plus Dark Shadow, quietly made their way through the first floor, checking each room they came across before moving on to the next floor. When they made it to the 4th floor where the bomb was hidden, Tokoyami was immediately engaged by Kirishima, who easily deflected the hits from Dark Shadow with his hardening quirk. Izuku took note that the bird-headed teen seemed to be weaker at close-range combat while Kirishima excelled at it. Azui was left to deal with the other boy, Shiro, who was shooting tape out of his elbows. During the planning PRD, he seemed to have had prepared tape traps around the room to defend the bomb. The girl's frog-like abilities helped her dodge the tape user for a while, but one poorly timed dodge got her caught in one of the traps. Shiro quickly used his capture tape to take her out of the fight and then turned to help his partner. In the beginning, it seemed that the battle could have gone either way. Both teams had strong close and long-range attackers, but with the defeat of Azui, the winning team was clear. Kirishima kept attacking Tokoyami while hardening against Dark Shadow's hits until Shiro used his tape to immobilize the remaining hero. Villain team wins. All Might declared. Please return to the observation room for discussion. The battling students returned and the discussion was held like the 2 previous fights. Izuku finished up his notes and prepared for the next round. Once again, All Might selected the next teams from the boxes. Team E was the heroes and Team F was the villains. The students in question went to their respective prep areas as the 5 minutes began. The rest stood around exchanging small talk and predictions about the next match. Kirishima joined Izuku and Uraraka closer to the screens. The friends congratulated the redhead on his win, which he graciously accepted. All too soon, time was up and the next round began. Aoyama and Ishido versus Satu and Kuda. The villain team maiden. Imposing pair from their large statures alone. The muscular teen, Satu, ate some sugar from a pouch which Kirishima told Izuku that the boy's quirk converted sugar into energy which increased his strength. Satu stood confidently between the door of the room and the bomb. His partner on the other hand was another story. The boy who had rock-like features, Kuda, looked nervous. When the support student asked what his quirk was, the answer was to communicate and command animals to do his bidding. With that knowledge, Izuku then understood the teen's nervousness. In an environment such as a building, there were likely no animals for him to use. Maybe a rat or something, but for the most part animal-free. I wonder how he used his quirk to pass the practical exam. Does it work on all animals? Or was there a difference between mammals versus reptiles? Does it only work on animals? Could he use it with insects as well? Once the hero team made it to the bomb room, the match didn't last long. The boy who could shoot a laser from his belly button, Aoyama, shot the door to the room open and the pink girl who produced acid, Ishido, confidently slid into the room. Satu and Kuda put up a good fight using just their strength and height advantage, but in the end it wasn't enough. As the minutes passed, Izuku noticed that Satu's movements were getting slower and Kuda's limited confidence was dwindling. Using her acid, Ishido eventually trapped the villain team in a corner while Aoyama proudly walked toward the bomb and touched it, securing the hero team's victory. They all returned to the observation room and the class reviewed the match. With 4 battles completed and only 1 pair of students who had yet to fight, it was time to figure out who would compete again for the redemption round. I'm sure you're wondering how we will choose who will have a chance to save face, All Might said, smiling brightly and standing proudly in front of the students. We shall decide the fairest way possible among the students on losing teams who will face off as villains against young Kaminari and young Jiraiya. It is a time-honored tradition for breaking ties and making tough decisions. To decide our redemption team. The students waited with bated breath. It's time to play Gen Ken. All Might announced proudly. It's time to play Gen Ken. Izuku almost face-bombed at how excited the hero announced using a children's game to decide who would get another try. Then again, he wasn't really surprised. Throughout his school years from elementary through junior high, a lot of decisions were made using Gen Ken. Whether it was a tie in a classroom activity or deciding who would get the extra milk carton during school lunch. Now that he thought about it, it was the fairest way to choose. Let's get this Janken tournament started, All Might said. All students from a losing team, pair up and winners shall move on until we have 2 students remaining. Let's begin. The eligible students paired up with the ones nearest them. Satu and Kuda paired up since they were standing next to each other still. Kuda's scissors lost to Satu's rock. Yaoyorozu went against Azui and the frog girl won with scissors. Ajuru beat Tokoyami with paper after a few ties. Hagakure and Uraraka were in a stalemate for a hot minute until the invisible girl claimed victory with another scissor win which she made into a peace sign. Satu went against Azui and the frog girl won once again but with paper this time. Ajuru and Hagakure were apparently fierce opponents, both tying again and again. It went on and on until All Might had to step in. Alright. We don't have all day, All Might interjected after the umpteenth tie. I'll allow one more try before I end up choosing myself. Ready to lose? Hagakure taunted, flexing her gloved hands in anticipation. My only regret is that I won't be able to see your defeated face when I win, Ojiro jeered back, stretching his arms in an intimidating fashion. They stood in the middle of the room, sizing the other up as the rest of the students and teachers stood in a circle around them. Saisho wagu, the two chanted together, pounding their fists in the air with the beat. Ga! Ojiro gasped in disappointment when her rock beat his scissors. He glared at his hand for its betrayal as the boys tried to comfort him. Meanwhile, the invisible girl jumped in victory while the other girls congratulated her. Izuku watched the shenanigans of 1A from the sidelines, smiling and shaking his head slightly. He quickly wrote down the names of the villain team in his notebook, planning to combine his notes from this battle with his previous ones. With the redemption team finally decided, the teams left for their respective prep areas. The 5 minutes passed quickly and the final round of the battle training began. Kaminari and Jairu versus Azui and Hagakure. The blonde student, Kaminari, trailed behind the purple-haired girl, Jairu, as she used her quirk by plugging in the earphone jacks connected to her ears into the wall. Izuka found it fascinating that the appendages could extend and retract at will. She closed her eyes to listen for any sign of the villains while Kaminari kept watch. Soon the hero team moved further into the building, heading toward the area Jairu heard the villains moving around. Her quirk would be great for reconnaissance, though she shouldn't close her eyes like that. I wonder how far her hearing range is and if it affects her normal hearing. Can she plug them into a phone like regular headphones? What other applications does her quirk have that would have helped her in the practical? It didn't take the heroes long to find the bomb room, but were suddenly more cautious when they only found Azui. Hagakure had removed the visible parts of her costume to be fully invisible. Izuku noticed she made sure to hold the capture tape in a closed fist to render it invisible as well. To help the other students see Hagakure's movements, All Might pulled up another window on the screen with an infrared view of the fight. Jairu stepped up to face the frog girl, plugging her jacks into the speakers in her shoes, readying for battle. Azui managed to jump out of the way as the purple net fired off a sonic attack where she was seconds before. The villain dodged again and again as Jairu kept her busy while Kaminari inched towards the bomb. With the infrared view, the students observing could see Hagakure sneak up on Jairu and capture her with the tape. The purple-haired girl immediately stopped fighting and left the room quickly. Izuku wondered why she had left until Kaminari let off an intense burst of electricity directly from his own body. The support student guessed they had discussed the last-ditch move during the planning time. However, the villains apparently were expecting such a move and Hagakure had climbed on Azui's back just in time for the frog girl to jump into the air. The electric attack surged through the floor before dissipating, leaving Kaminari standing with a dumb expression on his face. His own attack rendered him useless and the victory was given to the villain team. The other 3 students helped lead Kaminari back to the observation room. Izuku made sure to note that something had to be done about him short-circuiting his own brain. How that hadn't been addressed already was beyond him. After discussing the last match and some final comments from All Might, the class was dismissed and Class 1A left for the locker rooms to change out of their costumes. The teacher and support student made their own way back to the main building and towards one of the meeting rooms to discuss the lesson. As soon as the door was closed, All Might deflated with an exaggerated sigh of relief which made Izuku giggle. "Phew, that was exhausting," All Might said, moving to sit on the couch. He started to prepare some tea and gestured the student to take the opposite stool. "To be honest, it's kind of a relief that you know about this form. When I was told a student would be observing the class, I wasn't sure I would make it through the training and the talk after in my muscle form." "A silver lining, you might say, All Might?" Izuku joked, gesturing at All Might's pooling Silver Age costume. "A good one, my boy," All Might laughed. "Oh, that reminds me. Since we can't have you calling me by my hero name while in this form, let me formally introduce myself. My name is Yagi Tashinori. Nice to meet you." He bowed his head in greeting. "Oh, Midoriya Izuku," the boy squeaked and became flustered. "But you already knew that from me telling you before the training. Which was silly of me to say so again. But it was instinct to say it and now I'm rambling. It's nice to meet you too." "Not to worry, my boy," All Miyagi assured with a chuckle as he finished the tea, placing the cups on the table. "With that done, when you see me in this form, please address me by my civilian name. I am putting my trust in you to help me keep this secret." Wow, All Might trusts me with his name. No one knows his name except high-level pro heroes. What an honor. "Oh, of course, Yagi-sensei?" Izuku replied, unsure which honorific to go with. "Since we're in a school, I think sensei is more appropriate," Yagi said, smiling fondly at his antics. He took a sip of tea and the boy followed suit. "Now, let's start discussing what you observed during the training." Taking out his notebook and placing it on the table open to his notes, Izuku walked his idol through his analysis of the matches. Here and there, Yagi would give his own opinion and the greenette would make a note of what he said. It was nice spending this time with his hero with none of the awkwardness he expected. After they finished going through his notes, the conversation turned more casual. "So, I see you went with the support course," Yagi commented. "How's that going for you?" "Oh, it's great," Izuku answered. "About a week after I met you, I met my friend Mei-chan. She learned everything she knows about support from her mom and I asked her to teach me. We're in 1H together now." "I see. I'm happy for you, my boy," Yagi said with a small smile. "I know what I said to you that day was harsh, but with how dangerous the hero profession is, it was a truth you needed to hear. I'm glad you found a more attainable dream, young Midoriya. And there's the awkwardness." Why, sure," Izuku muttered, using taking a sip of tea to not look directly into the man's eyes. "I find your analysis skills intriguing and I've enjoyed working with you today," Yagi continued, seemingly oblivious to his discomfort. "I look forward to working with you again tomorrow and in the future. You may not be training to be a hero, but there are other ways to help others. Use the skills you have to be the best hero you can be with your own strengths." Izuku knew All Might meant for his words to be encouraging, but they still stung. They rang with the truth that his idol didn't believe in him. The support student chose not to tell the hero about his plans for the sports festival. He would prove to the man and the world that the quirk did not define a person or dictate their future. That you didn't need a quirk to be a hero. All Might may not believe in my dream, but I do have one person who does. How strange that a villain believes I can be a hero more than the number one hero himself. The irony. This time when the purple one and green one entered Gym Gamma, Shoyuta was ready for them. He watched the two first years from the rafters as they started to train. Midoriya led Shinso through a series of stretches to loosen up. While their backs were turned to the Erasure hero, Shoyuta expertly and silently lowered himself to the floor of the gym. He wanted to see how long it would take them to notice him. The man expected it would take a few minutes, but as soon as his foot touched the ground, the green one froze. Slowly, Midoriya turned around, his green eyes widening as he took in the sight of the dark and intimidating figure of the underground hero before him. Interesting. Good situational awareness. It wasn't long that Shinso, noticing his friend's reaction, also turned and cursed under his breath in surprise. "Eraserhead?" the green one squeaked. "So, he can recognize me on sight," Shoyuta thought, one eyebrow raised. Though I shouldn't be too surprised with those notes of his. Eraserhead? The one you talked about yesterday? The purple one questioned, looking between the other two. Midoriya could only nod in reply, unable to look away from the hero. Eraserhead is my hero designation, the man drawled out. My name is Aizawa Shoyuda. On UA campus, call me Aizawa. Aizawa? As in class 1, as expelled 2 students on the first day Aizawa? Midoriya exclaimed, his eyes somehow opened even wider. Shinsu's face paled at that comment. Correct, the man confirmed, taking a step closer to the pair. He noticed Shinso was only slightly shorter than himself, but he towered over Midoriya. They had shown no potential. I take my job as a pro hero and as a teacher very seriously. UA is one of the top schools for a reason, and anyone who is hoping to coast through their time here has no right to walk these halls. I get what you're saying, Midoriya said, tilting his head in confusion. But it doesn't explain what you're doing here. We're not in 1A. Yet, Shoyuda thought to himself. He already saw the potential in these 2 students that slipped through the cracks. And he did conveniently have 2 open spots in his class after all. Yesterday, I happened to be taking a nap in here when it was interrupted by 2 students, Shoyuda explained, scratching the scruff on his chin absent-mindedly. Turns out they were 2 first years training for the coming sports festival. I had planned to leave them to it, that is until this one. He pointed a finger at Midoriya, who blushed. Started talking about a certain underground hero. He pointed at himself. In a level of detail that should have been impossible. Considering the amount of effort I put into avoiding the media, it came as a surprise finding out someone, a first year no less, knew not only my hero name but also my quirk and how it works. The 2 students were too intimidated to interrupt the man. Even if they weren't, they wouldn't know what to say. Not only that, but they knew about how I was able to transfer into the hero course, Shoyuda continued. Planning to follow in my footsteps and try to take the sports festival by storm. No easy task, I can assure you from experience. The chances are slim and the likelihood of failure is high. However, the underground hero's black eyes pierced through green and purple ones, slowly switching from one to the other and back again. I want to help you. What? Midoriya shrieked while Shinso let out, holy shit. I agree with you that both the hero practical and the sports festival are skewed to favor physical and flashy quirks, Shoyuda stated, as the green one sputtered nonsense words until the purple one flicked his arm. I know firsthand that mental and non-combative quirks are no match against robots. I have voiced for years how irrational it is to hold the practical the same way for all students. Differentiation is key to proper education and assessment. Who knows how many potential heroes were lost because of a biased test? But if these 2 could show that any quirk, or lack thereof, could become a heroic one, maybe something could finally be done to fix it. By training you, I hope to help you succeed in your goal of using the festival to prove your worth. In doing so, if you are able to place high enough and catch the principal's eye, perhaps we can use it as a stepping stone. Proof that the current system is flawed and needs an overhaul to be more effective in finding those with the potential to be a hero. No pressure, then, Shinso snarked to break the tension in the room, drawing a snort from his friend. If you are going to help us, Midoriya said, though he still couldn't believe that the Eraserhead wanted to work with them. What do you plan to do? Like you said yesterday, quirks are merely tools, Shoyuda replied. Take that away and what are you left with? For Shinso, purple eyes shot up to black ones in shock of the man knowing his name. I agree with training you using your quirk as well as without. Brainwashing can be a useful skill and has a lot of flexibility if you use it right. We can experiment with it to figure out what does and doesn't work. But if you are up against an opponent that knows about it already, knowing how to fight without it will increase your chances. I can oversee your training when he is in the support studio. As for you, Midoriya? The green one knew it was coming, but he still flinched slightly in surprise. You have a solid foundation already in hand-to-hand. Although you don't have a quirk, I have a feeling you plan to use those quirk-replicating support items you talked about in your interview. It's bold and has never been done before. I hope you're prepared for the attention you'll be getting, whether you succeed or not. I will help you refine your fighting technique as well as assist you or find another teacher to help practice with whatever support items you come up with. I'm sure Hisashi would be more than happy to help as well. I'm dreaming. Hitoshi-kun, am I dreaming? I must be because this can't be real, Midoriya rambled, not used to teachers wanting to help him. You're not dreaming, Izuku, Shinso replied, flicking his friend's arm again. But we may have entered into a parallel universe that actually likes us for once. If that were so, then it would have to be one where Katsuki acts more like a puppy rather than a feral cat. Can you imagine? With a sappy smile on his face. Oh God, it feels wrong. You would have to counterbalance it by being as gloomy as possible, complete with moody bangs. What would that make you then? Well, I would. Yuta watched the banter go back and forth between the two, becoming more exasperated by the second. Why did I have to see potential in children who acted like this? It seemed it was his lot in life to be surrounded by annoying people. Problem children, Yuta interrupted, eyes glowing red and black hair raising as he activated his quirk. Problem children? Midoriya asked, tilting his head. What do you mean? You too, you're going to be problem children. I just know it, the tired man replied, his hair falling as he released his quirk. You're the one who offered to help us, the green one exclaimed. I know, and I'm sure I'll regret it in one way or another, the hero stated. But my offer still stands. Would you allow me to help train you? Both of you? I've already been through what you plan to do, so it only makes sense. Can't argue with that, Aizawa-sensei, Midoriya said with a smirk. Yuta raised a brow at the odd tonal emphasis on the honorific. It would be senseless to refuse, Shinso interjected, also smirking. The man looked at them slightly confused. What are they? His presence alone would be good for us, Midoriya retorted. They are really. He could show us the essence of being a hero, Shinso shot back. Of course they are. Yuta groaned in annoyance as he realized they were making puns. Really bad ones. I don't think he appreciates our sense of humor, the green one shot back, making Yuta groan again at the continued puns. Do you want my help or not, problem children? Yuta asked, running his hand down his face in annoyance. Yes, Aizawa-sensei, the pair answered, though Midoriya with more energy and a brighter smile than Shinso. Very well, let's begin, the hero said, removing his capture weapon and goggles. For next couple of hours, Yuta did his own tests to check their skills and limits. He had them spar with him as well so he could assess where to start. Shinsu's face met the mat quickly, but the taller teen kept getting back up, which was good. Giving up so easily is not what a hero does. Midoriya held his own for a longer time, deflecting and dodging while getting in some good hits and kicks. But eventually he too found himself face-planted on the mat. By the end of the training session, the students were exhausted with sore muscles and covered in bruises. But they were smiling as they lay on the mats working on catching their breath while the man sat beside them. Yuta produced some water bottle for them to drink. Good work today, problem children, the man said as he put his goggles and capture weapon back on. I'll work on a plan for your training and provide suggestions on what foods to eat. A proper diet is essential when training your body. I will guide you as best I can, but in the end, it's up to you to achieve your goal. Yes, Aizawa-sensei, his new non-hero students said in unison. All right, with that, we'll call it a day, Yuta said, standing up from the mat. Let's clean up and I'll walk you out. It didn't take long with 3 people to put the mats away, clean up any mess they had made, and for the students to change back into their uniforms. The students collected their bags and the trio left Gym Gamma. The man walked the pair to the gate, asking questions about Shinsu's quirk and Midoriya's previous training. As they approached the gate, the group stood around for a few minutes talking. Oh, Midoriya, I almost forgot, Yuta said once he finished asking all his questions. My Jima gave me the goggles you made for me. I will have to test them before using them professional, but thank you. You're welcome, the green one chirped, smiling brightly causing the other two to squint. If you have any questions or issues with them, please let me know. Too bright, Shinso commented, pulling out a pair of sunglasses and putting them on. Agreed, Shoyuta concurred, thinking he should keep a pair on him as well. Now go home, problem children. I have some paperwork to finish up before returning home myself. I don't want to keep my couch waiting. Or my cats and the cockatoo I call a husband. Thank you for your help today, Aizawa-sensei, Midoriya said cheerfully, bowing in thanks. I look forward to working with you. Ditto, Shinso tacked on with a nod before turning to walk through the gate. The man moved to head towards the main building but stopped when the green one called out to him. Oh, Aizawa-sensei? Aizawa hummed a reply as he turned toward the greenette. Tie your hair up or something. It gives your quirk away. With that, the boy left with his friend as they made their way to their respective homes, leaving behind a stunned hero watching their retreating backs. Problem child? When Izuku arrived at UA the next morning, he was met with a media circus crowding the front gates of the school. Oh boy, this is going to be unpleasant. Thankfully, he could put off having to deal with shoving his way through the mass of bodies as he waited for his friends. DMN, Hitoshi said, yawning as he approached. Wonder what's got them all riled up this early in the morning. I think they found out about All Might being a teacher here, Izuku replied, scanning the crowd. They keep questioning students about him, which they're not supposed to since they're minors. Ugh, it's going to be such a pain to get through that. A shiver ran up his spine at the thought of being pushed on all sides by other bodies. He hated big crowds. Thankfully, by that time, Aizawa had come to address the mass of reporters, making them disperse enough to let students through. Mei showed up at this time and they had no issue entering the campus. Izuku shot the erasure hero a grateful look and received a nod in return. Though he did jump when one adventurous reporter tried to enter too, activating the UA barrier which slammed the gate shut in their face. Mei and Izuku made it to 1H with a few minutes to spare, allowing them time to ready themselves for homeroom. Soon after, Maijima arrived and homeroom began. With the normalcy of it all, he couldn't help but smile. It was nice falling into a new routine. Good morning, class, Maijima began, receiving a greeting in return. First off, Midoriya? Again? Is calling me out going to be a recurring thing? Not the kind of routine I wanted to make. Principal Nizu has requested to see you. Please bring your belongings and head to his office. And no, you're not in trouble. The last bit the teacher added as the other students teased him for being called out, again. Izuku and Mei shared a look, both shrugging since neither knew why the principal would be interested in him. As Maijima continued with homeroom, the greenette packed his bag while the class started on their next task of choosing the class officers. Something that Izuku didn't mind missing since he hoped to be transferred in the near future. As the 1H students began to vote, he headed out of the classroom. It didn't take him long to get to the principal's office, and after stealing his nerve, he knocked on the door. Come in, a voice called out from the room. Cautiously, Izuku opened the door and entered the room. Principal Nizu was seated at his desk and Aizawa was leaning on the wall behind the mammal. Taking a breath to steady himself, the support student walked into the room and made his way toward them. Thank you for joining us, Midoriya-kun, Nizu greeted with a smile. Please sit. We have something to discuss with you. Would you like some tea? He gestured toward the seat in front of his desk as he pulled out a tea set. Sitting down, Izuku graciously took the tea, took a sip, and turned his full attention toward the principal. What is it that you wanted tea to talk to me about, sir? Yes, there is something that Aizawa-san has brought to my attention, Nizu explained. He picked up a piece of paper and held it out to Izuku. Does this look familiar to you? The greenette took the paper and nodded his head, recognizing its contents immediately. It was a copy of his notes on Eraserhead from his notebook. He has a copy of it? Izuku looked from the paper to the hero himself with a questioning look. When Maijima came to give me the goggles you made, Aizawa explained, tone neutral as ever. He showed me that notebook of yours. Decided to make a copy of them. Impressive analysis, by the way. Izuku couldn't help but blush as one of his favorite heroes complimented him. Yes, quite impressive indeed, Nizu agreed. Such a skill is very useful, one that should be nurtured and refined. Which is why we have called you here this morning. Do you have this notebook with you? I'd like to take a look at it if you would allow me. Oh, sure, the student replied, reaching into his bag. Just be careful with it, please. He had a rough tea time. He handing the tattered notebook which the principal carefully took from him. Izuku watched as Nizu slowly flipped through the pages, his black eyes soaking up the information inside with intimidating speed. The student started to fidget as the minutes passed by. My. This is more than I was expecting. Nizu exclaimed. This hobby of yours could rival a professional's analysis work. Why, you really think so? Izuku asked, blushing slightly from the compliment. I do indeed. Your mind intrigues me, Midorigan, Nizu replied, placing the notebook down on his desk and bringing his paws together in front of him. Such a skill as this is important in our line of work. Most people take years to train their minds to think as you do. Because of this, I have a proposition for you. Normally we don't start analysis training until second year, but I think we should start yours as soon as possible. I would like to help you with this and take you as my personal student. Izuku didn't miss when Aizawa seemed to flinch slightly at that. Is that a bad thing? Should I be worried? He looked toward the tired man, searching for answers, but the man gave nothing away. Why you wanted to teach me, personally? Izuku asked as he turned back to the principal, not quite believing what he was hearing. Of course, Nizu said, smiling. Whether the smile was a good thing or not remained to be seen. As you most likely know, my quirk is high specs, which gives me an IQ that is higher than most humans. As such, I have a hard time finding someone with an intelligence to rival my own. Your analysis is something that I've taken a personal interest in to explore and improve. It would also be in UA's best interest to help you hone this skill. Izuku didn't know what to say, his mouth opening and closing like a fish in his loss for words. He swore he heard a chuckle from Aizawa that he covered with a cough. Sending a quick glare at the man, the greenette got a hold of himself again after a few deep breaths. Okay, if I agreed to this, Izuku said, his fist balled up on his knees. How would that work exactly? I have a full C-class schedule, studio time, and I need to use the time after school to train. Yes, I've been thinking about that, Nizu said, turning to his computer. I've heard from Yamada-san that you are fluent in English and your grades have been excellent in that subject at your previous schools. I think that the class time for that particular subject would be of better use improving your analysis, rather than studying a language you already know. We will talk with Yamada-san in regards to what assignments he would still require you to complete to pass the class, but other than that, I would like you to work on assignments set by me during that time. I guess that could work, Izuku responded, hand on his chin in thought. I've been learning English since I was little. My dad works in America and thought it was an important skill to have. I was worried about being bored during that class actually. I had that issue in junior high school. Then we are in agreement? Nizu inquired. That during your regular English classes, you will complete the necessary assignments in addition to analysis projects created by myself? Yes, Nizu-sensei, Izuku agreed, smiling with a determined look in his eyes. Please take care of me. Excellent. I'll take care of the necessary steps to make this happen, Nizu said, clapping his hands together happily. I will need to talk with Yamada-san to notify him of the change as well as your homeroom teacher. In the meantime, I would like to inform you of your first assignment. Already? Wow, that was fast. Then again, he is Principal Nizu. No time like the present. Nizu said as he scanned the pages of notes again. Your first assignment is to put your notes into code. There must be a way to protect this information. Izuku let out, confused. One of the points Aizawa-san made was that your notes are vulnerable in their current state, Nizu explained, looking up at his new personal student. To which I have to agree. Your level of information and understanding could be dangerous in the wrong hands. I'm afraid I must request that we keep your notebooks here at UA for safekeeping. Midoriya, we are not saying you can't continue these notebooks, Aizawa interjected to prevent the boy from freaking out too much. However, we also cannot allow them to be vulnerable as they have been so far. If a villain were to get their hands on your analysis, they could use it to do some real damage. We would like to bring them in and teach you to code your information to secure them. Correct, Nizu confirmed with a nod. We only want to ensure your safety as well as secure the information you provide. I will help you develop a code for your notebooks which you will then use to rewrite them. That is my first assignment for you. Why have a point? Izuku complied, nervous hands fidgeting on his knees. Nobody ever showed any interest in my notebooks before, so I never really thought about it like that. When would you like me to bring them in by? Today if convenient, Nizu answered. Aizawa-san has volunteered to accompany you home after school today to collect them. He will then bring them back here for safekeeping. Will I be able to use my notebooks at school? Izuku asked hesitantly, afraid that they would say no. He couldn't imagine not having his notebook with him, not after all these years of the hobby. I believe we can arrange some way to allow you access, Nizu replied, handing back the notebook. Perhaps checking out what you need and then returning it before leaving campus. At least until you have them all encoded. Though even once they are, I feel we should limit the number of them out in public. Just in case. Okay, Izuku agreed. It made more sense to protect his notebooks the more he thought about it. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? I believe that is all we needed to discuss today, Nizu answered, before addressing the man next to him. Unless you have anything, Aizawa-san? Midoriya, are you planning on training with Shinso today or working in the support studio? Aizawa asked. Probably the studio, Izuku replied, gathering his things and standing up. I gave Hitoshi-kun a workout routine for when I can't come, and I haven't been able to work in the studio since I've been observing the hero training. There's only so much time before the sports festival and I need to use it wisely. Very well, I'll meet you there when it's time to leave, Aizawa said with a nod. But if you finish early, I'll be working with Shinso in Gym Gamma. We'll make sure to balance your time in the support studio, Midoriya-kun, Nizu added as his personal student made to leave. You are a support student after all. It wouldn't do to prevent you from using our resources here in UA. You can go back to class. We'll meet again to discuss your analysis training. Thank you, Nizu-sensei and Aizawa-sensei, Izuku said with a bow and then headed for the door. Midoriya bowed again at the door and exited the office. Aizawa and Nizu watched his retreating form as the door closes. The man then walked around the desk and took the seat the boy had been sitting in. What is this training you mentioned, Aizawa-san? Nizu asked, taking a sip of tea. Midoriya and another student, Shinso Hitoshi, have been training for the sports festival since day one of starting at UA, Aizawa explained. The principal typed in the new name and pulled up the student's school profile. Other than those notes, another tidbit that Midoriya knows is that I transferred into the hero course by placing high in the festival. Both Midoriya and Shinso aim to do the same. They want to become heroes. Nizu nodded for him to continue. As I've said many times, the hero practical is flawed. Shinsu's quirk is brainwashing and has no effect on robots. He did try for the practical but failed because of that. Something he figured would happen and had applied for general studies as a backup plan. Midoriya said he didn't even bother to try because of, and I quote, obvious reasons. His lack of quirk, of course, Nizu commented with an understanding nod. Correct. Majima suspects he plans to use his proposed quirk replicating support items to get himself through the festival. To compensate for not having a quirk. An intriguing idea, Nizu stated, continuing to sip his tea. On top of that, he has experience with hand-to-hand, something that many students lack or ignore. I watched Midoriya lead Shinso through training on the first day and he's got the groundwork down. Shinso was noticeably inexperienced but willing to learn. So, yesterday I offered to help train them. That's quite out of character for you, Aizawa-san. The principal pointed out with a teasing tone. Taking on students that are not your own? They have potential, Aizawa retorted with a huff, crossing his arms. I hope that if they are able to achieve their goal for the festival, I can finally convince you that the hero practical needs an update and differentiation to be effective. Becoming a hero should not be dictated by what quirk you have. I, myself, didn't pass the practical, as you know. Yet I am a pro-hero now despite that setback. I believe they have the potential to as well. I see. Well then, I will keep an eye out for them during the festival, Nizu said, placing his paws together. However, I will not show bias. They must prove themselves with their own strength and skills. As you did. Agreed, Aizawa said with a nod before getting up and heading towards the door. Before he left, he paused and glanced back at the principal. When they get into the hero course, I call dibs. With that, he left to relieve Yamada from covering his homeroom. The wording on his parting comment did not go unnoticed by the principal. Not if when